Welcome back to the threshold. You have crossed it with me before. The edge of night, the edge of the moon's light, the edge of sleep, the edge of dreams, and more recently, the edge of death itself. We have walked beside the ones who escort the dying. We have stood in the throne rooms of the ones who rule what comes after, met the guardians who keep watch at every gate, learn what each tradition believed waited on the other side. We have been to the underworld now, many of them, but always as visitors, as listeners, brought there by the story, shown around by whoever ruled or guarded that particular dark, and then brought safely back out again, the way I have always brought you back out. Every single time. Tonight is different. Tonight, we don't meet the ones who tend the underworld, or rule it, or guard its gates. Tonight, we meet the ones who were never supposed to be there at all. Because in every underworld we have visited, there has been a kind of order to who belongs where. The keepers tend their crossings. The rulers hold their kingdoms. The dead, once they arrive, stay. But some people would not accept that order. Some people stood at the very door that is only ever supposed to open one way, and they did not turn back. They went in, on their own 2 feet, with their hearts still beating, into the one place the living are never meant to enter. Not summoned, not dead, not belonging there at all. And in some of tonight's stories, though not all of them, they came back out. The ancient Greeks had a word for it: katabasis, the descent, the going down. But the Greeks did not invent the idea. They only gave it a name, because long before the Greeks, in the flat, warm plains between 2 rivers, where the first cities rose from the mud, someone pressed a story into wet clay. A story about a goddess who heard something calling from beneath the world and turned toward it and went. That was 4,000 years ago, perhaps more. And the story did not stop there. It spread, or perhaps it did not spread at all. Perhaps it simply grew independently in every soil where human beings put down roots and looked up at the sky and understood for the first time that everyone they loved would one day be gone, that the world they were building was full of temporary people, that the ones sitting beside them at the fire would not always be there, because here is the thing that the research of centuries has revealed, the thing that scholars of mythology have found themselves unable to explain away. This story appears everywhere, in ancient Sumer and classical Greece and imperial Rome, in the deep forests of Finland and the royal courts of ancient India, in Japan, in the Norse world, among the Maya of Central America, among the Nez Perce people of the Pacific Northwest. Different gods, different underworlds, different names for the dark, different guardians at the gate, different rivers to cross, and different prices to pay, but the same shape. Someone loses something, or needs something, or refuses to accept what death has taken, and they turn toward the one door that is never supposed to open from this side, and they knock. Tonight, we are going to tell you their stories, all of them. We are going to travel from the oldest, a goddess in ancient Sumer, stripping herself of her power at each of 7 gates, descending into the dark with nothing left of herself but her name, to the newest in our telling, a Polynesian demigod who tried to crawl through the body of death itself and win immortality for the whole human race. We will visit knowledge seekers and grief-struck lovers and faithful spouses and devoted children and cunning trickster heroes. We will hear of a lone rider on a borrowed horse, carrying a message that almost almost changed everything. We will hear of those who went for love, a love so consuming it refused to accept what death had taken, that followed grief all the way down to its source, and knocked on the door that is never supposed to open. And we will hear what it cost them. We will hear of one woman who walked behind death for miles across the dust of the world, who did not waver, who did not doubt, who did not reach for what she could not yet touch, and who won. And we will hear of two brothers who defeated death so completely that they became the sun and the moon. These are not comfortable stories in the way that comfort is usually meant. They are not easy. Some of them end in tragedy. Some end in failure. Some end in a success so complete it reshapes the sky itself. But they are told tonight in the way they have always been told. In the dark, in the quiet, at the hour when the world of sleep draws close, and the boundary between things grows thin, at the hour when the living world loosens its grip, and the other world, whatever it is, feels just a little less far away, because these stories belong to the night. They always have. They are humanity's oldest conversation with the dark, the one we have been having in every language, in every century, since the first person sat beside the first loss and thought, I should go after them. So, settle yourself, let your breathing slow, in through the nose, long and easy, out through the mouth, letting it go all the way. Let the sounds of the living world grow distant. We begin at the beginning. 4,000 years ago, in a city called Nippur, between the Tigris and the Euphrates, in the flat, warm land where the first cities grew from the mud, where a goddess stood at the edge of everything she knew and opened her ear to what was calling from below. We begin in the oldest world we have, not old in the way that history books mean when they say old in the way that silence is old in the way that rivers are old, not because they stay the same, but because they keep moving, keep carving, keep finding the lowest place and flowing toward it, regardless of what stands in the way. We are in Sumer, in the flat, warm land between the Tigris and the Euphrates, where the first cities rose from the mud of the floodplains, where human beings first pressed the record of their lives and their gods and their dreams into wet clay and let it dry in the sun, so that 4,000 years later, archaeologists would lift those tablets from the earth and begin, slowly and carefully, to read. The land here is very flat. You can see a long way in every direction. The sky is enormous. The rivers are everything that grows, everything that lives, depends on them. In the spring they flood, and the world goes brown and silt-rich, and the crops come up thick and abundant. In the summer, the heat is relentless, the air heavy with the smell of the river and the mud and the reeds. The cities rise from this flatness, like something the land dreamed. Nippur, Ur, Uruk. Names so old they feel like they are made of the earth itself. This is where our story begins. This is where the oldest story of its kind was pressed into clay and kept. Someone thought it was worth keeping. They were right. Her name was Inanna. Say it quietly, the way it was meant to be said. Inanna, the name settling in the mouth like something laid carefully on a threshold bar, like an offering placed at a gate. She was the Queen of Heaven, the goddess of love and war and the morning star. That particular light you see in the east before the sun arrives. Too bright to be a star, but not yet the sun. The light that belongs to neither night nor day. She was the most powerful female deity in the Sumerian world. She was not simple. The oldest gods never are. She contained contradictions the way the world contains them. She was the goddess of love and the goddess of war simultaneously, the one who brought life and the one who presided over its undoing, the morning star that is beautiful and also the herald of a light that will eventually burn away everything softer than itself. She wore her divinity the way we wear our skin, not as something put on, but as something grown into, inseparable from the self that lived inside it. The crown of heaven on her head, hammered from divine gold, the lapis lazuli beads around her neck, blue as the sky at the moment before full dark. Her breastplate, which the Sumerians called Come, man, Come, a name that tells you something about the kind of goddess she was. The rod and ring of divine authority, the measuring cord of the world, her golden ring, her royal robe, which fell around her in the particular way that power falls when it is entirely natural, not draped, but settled. She had everything. The world above was entirely hers. And then one day, the poem does not tell us exactly when, does not give us a season or a particular morning, simply records the moment as if it arrived the way all important moments arrive, without announcement, without warning, preceded by nothing except the silence it breaks. She heard something calling from below. Her sister lived there, Ereshkigal, the queen of the great below, the ruler of the land from which no traveller returns. If Inanna was the morning star, Ereshkigal was the darkness the morning star rises out of, the vast, pre-existing dark that holds the light up, whether the light acknowledges it or not. They were sisters. They were opposites. They were the two halves of a world that needed both of them to function. The two sisters had not, the stories suggest, seen each other for a very long time. Ereshkigal's husband had died. The bull of heaven, a great divine force, a creature of cosmic significance, was gone. And somewhere in the darkness beneath the world, in the flat, dusty place where the dead go to eat clay and drink water and move through a pale imitation of the life they left behind, Ereshkigal was alone with her grief, grieving the way the ruler of death grieves. Absolutely, entirely, with no comfort available, and no one to witness it who wasn't already dead. What moved Inanna to descend is a question the ancient texts do not answer simply. The poem offers no explanation. It simply says, in the line that has haunted scholars for a century, the line that every translator has wrestled with, and none has fully resolved. From the great above, she opened her ear to the great below. She heard it calling. Perhaps it was love for her sister. Perhaps it was the particular pull toward the place where someone you love has gone. The instinct to be near the absence, as if proximity could be a form of closeness. Perhaps it was something stranger than either of these. The restlessness of a goddess who had stood at the top of everything and felt, suddenly, that she had not stood at the bottom, that the world she ruled was only half the world. Whatever it was, she turned toward it, and she went. But she was not reckless. This is one of the things the poem makes very clear, and it matters more than it might seem. Before she descended, Inanna dressed herself in all 7 of her divine powers. each one a layer of protection, each one a piece of who she was. She was not going down naked and undefended. She was going armored in her own identity, wrapped in everything that made her the Queen of Heaven. And she called her faithful servant Ninshubur to her side. Ninshubur, whose name means something close to Queen of the East, was Inanna's most trusted companion, her herald, the one who carried her messages and kept her counsel. Inanna took Ninshubur's hands and looked at her and gave her instructions with the careful specificity of someone who is not certain they are coming back. "Listen carefully," she said. "If I have not returned in 3 days and 3 nights, you must not stay silent. Do not sit at home and wait. Go to the great hall of the gods. Go to Enlil, the father of the gods, and beat the drum for me. Tell him where I have gone. Ask him to send help. If Enlil will not listen, go to Nanna, the moon god. Tell him. Ask him. If Nanna will not listen, go to Enki, wise Enki, god of wisdom and water, the one who understands the ways of life and death. He will not abandon me." Ninshubur promised. Her face was composed, but her eyes were not. Inanna gave her one last look, the look of someone memorizing something in case they do not see it again, and turned away. She walked toward the gate of the great below. The gate was guarded. All important thresholds are. The gatekeeper's name was Neti, chief of the guards of the land of no return. When Inanna knocked on the outer gate of the underworld, Neti looked through the opening at the figure standing there and did not immediately open the door. "Who are you?" he asked. "And why do you come to the land from which no traveler returns? Why does your heart lead you down this road?" Inanna looked back at him with the level gaze of someone who is accustomed to being obeyed. "I am Inanna, Queen of Heaven. I have come to witness the funeral rites of the Bull of Heaven, to be with my sister in her grief." Neti considered this. He told her to wait. He went inside to consult the queen. And Ereshkigal, when she heard that her sister stood at the outer gate, did not smile, did not rush to the door, did not throw it open with cries of welcome. She slapped her thigh. She bit her lip. She took the news deeply into herself, turned it over, considered it from every angle, held it against the knowledge of what she knew her sister to be and what her sister was capable of. And then she gave Neti his orders. "Let her in," she said, with a calm that was not kindness, "but treat her according to the ancient laws of the underworld. No one enters the great below with their powers intact. No one crosses into the land of the dead, dressed in the armor of the living. At each of the 7 gates, something must be surrendered. A piece of protection, a piece of identity, a piece of who you were before you came here. The underworld does not accept the living on the living's terms. It accepts them on its own." At the first gate, Neti stopped Inanna. "Remove the crown of heaven," he said. She stiffened. "What is this?" "Quiet, Inanna," said Neti. His voice was not cruel. It was simply certain. The ways of the underworld are perfect. They may not be questioned. She lifted the crown from her head. The weight of it left her. Something that had always been there. The particular feeling of being crowned, of being the person the crown says you are, was gone. She handed it to Neti and walked through the first gate. At the second gate, her earrings, small things, gold and lapis lazuli, worn since she could remember. She felt their absence immediately, the sudden lightness where there had always been weight. she walked through. At the third gate, the beads from around her neck, each one chosen, each one meaning something. She placed them in Netti's hands without looking at him. At the fourth gate, her breastplate. Come, man, come. The protection she wore against the world. The thing that said, I am not afraid. I am the one who makes others afraid. She set it aside and felt the vulnerability of her chest, the softness beneath, the thing she had been protecting. At the fifth gate, her golden ring. At the sixth gate, the rod and ring of justice, the symbols of her authority, the tools of divine power, the proof of everything she was entitled to. At the seventh gate, the deepest, the last, her royal robe, the final thing, the last layer of herself. It fell from her shoulders. She walked through the seventh gate without it. She entered the throne room of her sister, naked, naked in the way that means no power, no title, no protection, no identity beyond the bare fact of her existence. Just Inanna, just the person, stripped of everything the person had become. She bowed low before the throne. Ereshkigal looked at her. The 7 judges of the underworld turned their eyes toward the newcomer. The look of death, and Inanna, queen of heaven, goddess of love and war and a morning star, was turned to a corpse. A piece of rotting meat hung on a hook on the wall of the grate below. 3 days passed. 3 days and 3 nights. On the 4th day, Ninshubur did as she had been told. She beat the drum for her mistress. She went to Enlil, the father of the gods, and tore her clothes and beat her drum and wept and told him where Inanna had gone. Let the underworld keep what belongs to it, Enlil said. Inanna descended of her own will. I will not interfere. Ninshubur went to Nanna. The same words, the same closed door. She went to Enki. Enki listened. Enki, who was wise, who understood the nature of things, who could see past the surface of a situation to its mechanism. Enki did not say that Inanna had made her choice. He sat with the news. He looked troubled. And then he reached beneath his fingernails and drew out a small amount of dirt. And from that dirt, he fashioned 2 tiny creatures, neither male nor female, no larger than flies, small enough to slip through any crack, light enough to go unnoticed. He gave the first creature the food of life. He gave the second creature the water of life, and he sent them down into the grate below with careful instructions. Ereshkigal will be in pain, he said. She grieves, and grief in the Queen of the Dead is a terrible thing. When you find her, do not ask for anything. Do not demand. Do not argue. Simply witness her. When she cries out, cry out with her. When she moans, moan with her. Echo her pain back to her. And when, eventually, she offers you a gift in gratitude, ask for the corpse that hangs on the hook. Sprinkle it with what I have given you. The 2 tiny creatures slipped into the underworld, like water into cracks. They found Ereshkigal on her throne, writhing with some pain that was ancient and enormous. The moaning of a woman in labor. The moaning of a woman in deepest grief. The 2 indistinguishable from each other. And the creatures did what Enki had told them. They sat with her. When she cried out, they cried out. When she moaned, they moaned. They did not try to fix her. They did not try to stop her. They simply reflected her pain back to her, witnessed it, gave it company. Ereshkigal, who had perhaps never in all her existence been truly seen in her grief, stilled. She looked at the tiny creatures. Who are you? she asked. "And what do you want? I will give you a gift." "The corpse on the hook," they said. She looked at them for a long moment. Then she nodded. They sprinkled the food of life over the rotting meat on the hook. They sprinkled the water of life, and Inanna rose. But the underworld does not release its dead for nothing. This is the law that cannot be argued with, the rule that even Ereshkigal cannot override. If Inanna returns to the land of the living, someone else must take her place. The scales of the great below must balance. A soul in, a soul out. As Inanna ascended, reclaiming herself at each gate, the robe, the rod and ring, the golden ring, the breastplate, the beads, the earrings, the crown, dressing herself back into her own identity layer by layer, arriving at the upper world more completely herself with every gate she passed. She was followed. The Gala, the demons of the underworld. They walked behind her like a shadow that had decided to be plural, a darkness that wore faces, waiting for her to choose her substitute. The story of what happened next, who she chose, and why, and what it set in motion, is a story for another night. What matters here, tonight, is this. She went down. She was stripped of everything. She died in the dark. And she came back. The oldest story of its kind that we have. Pressed into clay by hands that have been dust for 4,000 years. And still, tonight, in the dark, recognizable. Still carrying whatever it was that made someone think it was worth keeping. The descent, the stripping, the death that is not permanent, the return, the shape of it. It will not be the last time we encounter this shape tonight. We travel now, from the flat, warm plains between the rivers, from the land of mud and sun and ancient cities. We travel north, far north, into a different kind of world entirely. The forests here are so old, they have forgotten what young trees look like. They go on for distances that defeat counting. In winter, the darkness is not an absence of light, but a presence in itself. A cold, enormous, patient thing that settles over the land for months at a time and changes everything about how you move through the world, how you speak, how you think. In this darkness, the wolves are heard, but rarely seen. The lakes lie black and still between the trees. The snow muffles everything. This is Finland. This is the world of the Kalevala, the great Finnish national epic, a collection of ancient songs and poems gathered in the 19th century from the mouths of the last people who still carried them, stitched together into something that feels older than a stitching, older than writing, older than almost anything except the landscape it came from. In this world, the greatest weapon is not a sword. It is a voice. His name was Väinämöinen. He was old. Not merely old in the way that men grow old, but old in the way that the land itself is old. He had been in the world since before memory. His name means something close to hero of the slow-moving river. And there is something in that name that tells you who he is before you have heard a single story about him. The slow-moving river. The thing that takes its time. The thing that appears to be still and is in fact going somewhere with absolute certainty. He was a shaman singer. In the world of the Kalevala, the most powerful magic is made through song, through the precise, careful, ancient words that the world was made from, still humming in the fabric of things, still available to those who know them. Väinämöinen knew them. He had been singing since before anyone else was born, and in all the years since, no one had ever matched him. When he sang, things happened. When he sang, the world listened and rearranged itself. He was wise, and he was old, and he was the greatest singer who had ever lived. And there was something he needed to know. He was building something, a great vessel, a boat of extraordinary purpose. The details shift depending on which version of the poem you follow, but the heart of it is consistent. There were 3 words of power he needed, 3 spells without which the work could not be completed, 3 pieces of ancient knowledge that would seal what he was making and make it whole. He searched among the living for them. He asked the wisest people he knew. He looked in the old places where old knowledge tends to gather. The roots of ancient trees, the cracks in old stones, the mouths of those who remembered more than they usually said. The words were not there. They were in Tuonela, the Finnish realm of the dead. Tuonela. The word sits in the mouth differently than most words. Tuonela. Something about it sounds like a door closing slowly, like water finding its level, like something settling that is not going to be moved again. It is the domain of Tuoni, the god of death, and his pale family. His wife, his daughters, the attendants of the dead, the figures who wait at the threshold and receive what comes to them. It is a dark island at the edge of everything, surrounded by a black river whose current runs one way only, the place where the dead go and do not leave. Väinämöinen knew exactly what Tuonela was. He knew the river and the ferryman and the gates and the law of the place. He went anyway. He walked into the forest, deeper than he usually went, past the familiar trees, past the places where he had walked 1,000 times. The trees changed as he went deeper, grew darker, closer together. The light between them changed. The sounds changed. Fewer birds, less wind, a particular quality of silence that is not the silence of an empty place, but the silence of a place that is paying attention. He walked until he reached the river of Tuoni. Black water, smooth, moving with a certainty that had nothing to do with wind or rain. It had its direction, and it kept it. On the far bank, just visible through the mist that rose from the water, were shapes, the dark outlines of Tuonela, the pale suggestions of what waited there. And at the water's edge, on the far side, stood a figure, a young woman, the daughter of Tuoni, sent to the crossing to ferry the dead across. She looked at Väinämöinen from across the black water with the expressionless patience of someone who has been doing this since before he was born. "Bring me over," he called. She looked at him for a long time without moving. "Why should I bring you over?" she said at last, her voice carrying across the water without effort, without warmth. "You have not died in battle. You have not drowned. You have not been taken by sickness or struck down by age. You are alive. You have no business in the realm of the dead. Why do you come here while your heart is still beating?" Väinämöinen had been a poet all his life. He was never without an answer. He gave her a series of explanations, some true, some shaped, some that were the kind of truth that is also a story told at a useful angle. Whether she believed him or simply grew tired of standing at the water's edge while he talked, she brought the boat across. The black water lay behind him. Tuonela opened before him. The wife of Tuoni received him. She was courteous in the way that the dead are courteous, with a formality that is not warmth, with hospitality that is a ritual rather than a welcome. She brought him a great foaming mug of ale. She asked him his name and his business. He told her what he had come for. The 3 words of power. The ancient spells that were kept here among the dead, preserved in the dark, where they could not be misused by the living. She looked at him. Her face gave nothing away. "Sleep," she said. "You have come a long way. Rest here tonight." She showed him to a bed. She was, in the manner of Tuonela, entirely gracious about it. Väinämöinen lay down. He did not intend to sleep. He may have slept anyway. The air of Tuonela does things to the waking mind. While he lay there, the people of Tuonela worked quietly in the dark. They took iron and they wove it, thread by thread, mesh by mesh, into a net. A great net stretched across the width of the Black River, from bank to bank, anchored and secured and tested. Iron mesh so fine that not even a salmon could slip through it. Not even a pike. Not even an eel. Finer than anything that could be made in the living world. It was made for one thing, whatever tried to leave. They never gave him the words. The morning came, or what passes for morning in the realm of the dead. A slight thickening of the dark. A change in the quality of the silence. And Väinämöinen woke and understood what had happened. He lay still for a moment, feeling the shape of the trap that had been laid around him while he slept, assessing it the way a person assesses any problem, calmly, completely, without panic. Then he transformed himself. He became a snake, long and dark and thin as a crack in the earth, and slipped into the Black River, and through the iron mesh, and through the cold water, and up the far bank, and back into the forest, back into the world of the living. He stood in the trees for a while, dripping and cold, and looked back the way he had come. And then he said something. The poem records it carefully, as if it matters, as if the words he spoke afterwards were part of the spell, even though they came too late to help. He cursed anyone who tried to do what he had done. He said that no living person should go to Tuonela and expect to return. He said that the dead keep their secrets, and the price of seeking those secrets while you are still alive is too high. He had gone for knowledge. He had come back with nothing, except perhaps the knowledge that some things cannot be known from this side of the river, that the words he was looking for were not meant for him, that the boat he was building would have to be completed some other way, or not completed at all. There is a particular kind of courage in this that is easy to overlook. Not the courage of going, though that was real and considerable, but the courage of coming home empty-handed and telling the truth about it, of standing at the edge of the forest you emerged from, dripping and cold and without the thing you went for, and saying, "I tried. I went. The dead kept their secrets," and then going on. Väinämöinen went into the dark to have a single question answered. He was not the only one. Two of the most famous descents in all of classical mythology belong to that same category. Two men who went to the underworld because they needed to understand something. Because the living world, with all its oracles and wise men and ancient libraries and inherited knowledge, had run out of answers. Because the questions they were carrying were too large, too specific, too urgent for any living voice to address. Because there are things that only the dead know, and sometimes the living need to know them badly enough to go and ask. They are also, it should be said, two of the greatest storytellers' creations in all of Western literature. So their descents are described with a richness of detail that the older stories rarely have. Every shade they encounter, every river they cross, every shade they recognize is catalogued and vivid, as if the poets who told these stories knew that what we most want, confronted with the land of the dead, is not philosophy, but specificity, not a theory of the afterlife, but a description of the furniture. Odysseus. You may know him already, the cleverest of all the Greeks who sailed to Troy, the one who thought of the wooden horse, the one whose 10-year journey home became one of the foundational stories of Western literature. He was not a man given to sentiment. He was a man given to angles, to finding the oblique approach, the unexpected solution, the way through that nobody else had considered. He had survived 10 years of war and was now 3 years into a journey home that had no clear end in sight, blown off course by gods with long memories and little patience. He was lost, not simply lost in the navigational sense, though he was that too. Lost in the deeper sense of not knowing what stood between him and home, not knowing which choices would end him and which would save him, not knowing how many more years of wandering lay ahead before he would finally see Ithaca again. The sorceress Circe told him what he needed to do. She told him with the matter-of-fact directness of someone delivering instructions she has given before. You must go to the ends of the earth, she said, to the place where the sun never shines and the rivers of the underworld meet. There you will dig a trench in the earth and pour offerings into it, honey and milk and wine and water. You will sprinkle barley, and then you will slaughter a black sheep. The blood will bring the dead. They hunger for it. They are drawn to it. It gives them, briefly, something like coherence. But you must keep your sword drawn. You must hold back the other shades until Tiresias has spoken. He is the one you need. Tiresias, the old blind prophet of Thebes, dead these many years, but whose gift of sight had survived death itself, whose ability to see through time and consequence was so extraordinary that even Hades had allowed him to keep it in the underworld. Only Tiresias could tell Odysseus the way home. Odysseus did not technically descend into the underworld the way the others in tonight's stories did. He stood at the threshold, at the very edge of the world, at the place where the living earth gives way to the realm of Hades, in a grove of poplar trees beside the meeting of the rivers Acheron and Cocytus and Phlegethon. He dug his trench and poured his offerings and held his sword over the pit and waited. The dead came. They came like moths to a flame, drawn by the smell and warmth of blood, flickering, insubstantial, the shadows of people who had once been solid and present and alive. Young men killed in battle, old men who had lived their natural span, brides still wearing their wedding clothes, children, warriors, strangers, and among them, and this is the moment in the poem that lands like a stone dropped into still water, among them was his mother. He had not known she was dead. She had been alive when he left for Troy, alive when the war ended, alive, as far as he knew, in the years since. And here she was, a shade among the shades, drawn to the smell of blood, not yet recognizing him, just another shape in the crowd of the dead, until she drank, and the blood gave her back enough coherence to see clearly. he had to hold his sword against her, against his own mother, to keep her from the blood until Tiresias had spoken. He had to be a strategist first, and a son second. Even here, even at the edge of the underworld, even with his mother's shade straining toward him. Tiresias came, spoke, told Odysseus what he needed to know, the way home, the warnings, the dangers still ahead, the price of each choice still to come, told him about the cattle of the sun god Helios, which must not be touched on pain of losing everything, told him what waited at home and how to handle it. And then Tiresias faded back into the crowd of the dead, and Odysseus sheathed his sword and let his mother approach. She told him she had died of grief, waiting for him. The long years of not knowing whether he was alive or dead, whether he was on his way home or would never come. It had hollowed her out, she said. She had simply faded. He tried to hold her. 3 times he reached for her, wanting to embrace her, wanting to give her the comfort of being held. 3 times his arms passed through nothing, through the weightless, insubstantial air where she should have been. The dead cannot be held by the living. They are beyond that kind of comfort, beyond reach of arms. He left with his knowledge intact, and his grief new and raw, and he went to find his way home. Aeneas came later, a Trojan, not a Greek, a man who had escaped the burning of Troy with his aged father on his back and his young son by the hand, a man who had been told by the gods, in no uncertain terms, that his destiny was not simply to survive, but to found something, a new people, a new city, a civilization that would one day rule the world. That city would be Rome. But Aeneas was exhausted. He had been wandering for years, carrying the weight of a destiny he hadn't asked for, losing people along the way. His father Anchises had died on the journey, died before reaching Italy, died before seeing what they were building. And Aeneas had buried him in Sicily and continued on because the gods required it. But the grief was a weight he hadn't put down. He came to Cumae, on the coast of Italy, to the cave of the Sibyl, the oracle of Apollo, ancient and terrifying. A woman who had been given so many years of life that she had shrunk down to almost nothing, her body barely containing her anymore. Only her voice still enormous. She agreed to guide him, but first she told him what he needed. "There is a golden bough," she said, "growing in a dark wood near here. You will know it by the way it catches the light. It shines even in shadow, even in the deepest part of the forest where the light should not reach. Break it from the tree. It will come willingly if the fates mean for you to go. It will not move if they do not. Without it, you cannot enter the kingdom of the dead. Persephone demands it." Aeneas went into the forest. He found it, not easily, not immediately, but as if it chose the moment to reveal itself, as if it had been waiting for him to be ready to see it, glowing faintly among the dark leaves, warm to the eye, in a way that gold warms, the branch of a tree, unlike any other tree, the passport to the country of the dead. He broke it free. It came away willingly. The underworld that Aeneas entered was vast. The Sibyl led him through the vestibule of death, past the terrible personifications that stand at the threshold, grief and anxiety, and disease, and old age, and fear, and hunger, the abstract horrors that flesh out over time into specific forms, past the great elm tree, where false dreams cling to the underside, of every leaf, past the river, Acheron, and the wailing crowd of the unburied dead stranded on the bank, those who died without proper burial rites, condemned to wait on the near shore for 100 years before Charon would take them across, past Charon himself, ancient and filthy, moving his boat with terrible efficiency across the water that lay like lead between the worlds, past Cerberus, three-headed, enormous, the guardian of the gate, whom the Sibyl put to sleep with a honeyed cake laced with herbs, into the fields of the dead. And here the underworld revealed itself, not as darkness and horror, but as something more complex and more human. The fields where those who died for love wandered in a forest of myrtle, still wearing whatever expression they wore at the end, still carrying the particular posture of unresolved feeling. Aeneas moved through them and saw a figure he recognized, Dido, the queen of Carthage, who had loved him, who had offered him a home and a kingdom and herself when he arrived, storm-battered and lost on her shores, who had watched him leave because the gods commanded it, because destiny required it, because Rome had to be founded, and it could not be founded in Carthage, and who had killed herself when his ships disappeared over the horizon. She stood among the other shades in the myrtle forest, still carrying the wound of it, still wearing the face she had worn at the end. Aeneas wept when he saw her. He tried to explain. He told her that the gods had commanded him, that he had not wanted to leave, that he had wept when he sailed away, and the weeping had been real. She turned away from him without a word. She walked back to the shade of her former husband and stood beside him, and the forest took her in again, and she was gone from him as completely as if she had never been there. He stood there for a long time. Then he went on. There was nothing else to do. He found Anchises at last in the Elysian fields, the paradise of the honoured dead, a place of green light and open meadows, and a warmth that has no particular source. His father was standing by the river Lethe, the river of forgetting, watching the souls gathered there, those who had served their time in the underworld and were now preparing to be born again, drinking the water of forgetting, so they would enter new lives clean and unencumbered by what they had been before. Anchises saw his son coming toward him, and his face opened. Aeneas ran. He tried to embrace his father. His arms passed through air. 3 times he reached for him. 3 times the same thing. The same weightless nothing. The same gap between reaching and touching. The same unbridgeable distance between the living and the dead, even when they stand 3 feet apart and can see each other clearly. "Do not grieve," said Anchises, his voice as real and warm as it had always been. "I am here. We are together. This is enough." And then he showed Aeneas something extraordinary. He showed him the souls waiting by the Lethe, pointed out among them the ones who were, or would be, the great figures of Roman history. Romulus, Numa, the kings and consuls and generals and emperors who had not yet been born, gathered in the underworld like seeds waiting for spring. He walked Aeneas through centuries of destiny, naming each figure, explaining what they would build, what they would mean. "These are your descendants," Anchises said. "This is what you are carrying. This is why the suffering matters. This is the shape of what you are building. And it is glorious. And it is real." Aeneas stood in the green light of the Elysian fields and watched a future assemble itself before him. and understood, perhaps for the first time, what he was actually doing. He left through the ivory gate, the gate of false dreams, the gate through which the dead send visions back into the world of the living. An odd exit that has been debated ever since. Perhaps the poet meant that all visions of the future are, in some sense, uncertain, that even the most hopeful glimpse of what is coming is still a dream. But Aeneas carried it with him, the knowledge that what he was doing mattered, that the suffering had a shape, that the story went on. Sometimes that is enough. Not everyone who crossed the threshold went because they had no choice. Not everyone went because grief had hollowed out the world, or because a question could not be answered any other way, or because love refused to accept a closed door. Some went because they believed the door would open for them, regardless of what stood behind it. Some went because they had never, in their whole extraordinary lives, been told no. Theseus. You may know him already, the slayer of the Minotaur, the one who found his way out of the labyrinth on a spool of thread given to him by a woman he would later abandon on an island and never think of again. King of Athens, son, depending on which telling you trust, of a mortal king or of Poseidon himself. A man who had spent his whole life proving that no monster, no maze, no impossible task was beyond him. By the time this story finds him, he had grown restless in the particular way that men grow restless when the world has run out of monsters worth fighting. He had a friend, Pirithous, king of the Lapiths, a people of the Thessalian mountains, a man who had first tested Theseus by stealing his cattle, just to see what kind of man would come after him. Theseus came. The two men stood face to face, ready for a fight, and found themselves instead struck by something neither expected: respect. They put their swords down. They swore an oath of friendship on the spot, the kind of oath that men in these stories are always swearing, and rarely mean as completely as these two apparently did. They were, the myths agree, both sons of gods. And sons of gods, they decided between themselves, deserved wives who were daughters of gods. Nothing less would do. Theseus went first. He decided that Helen, not yet the Helen of Troy, not yet a grown woman, just a girl, the daughter of Zeus, extraordinarily young, was worthy of him. And he abducted her from Sparta and hid her away with his mother to raise until she was old enough to marry. Her brothers came for her eventually. That is a different story, and not one that ends well for Theseus. But it is not tonight's story. Pirithous, watching his friend, felt his own ambition sharpen. If Theseus could reach for a daughter of Zeus and take her, Pirithous decided, he would reach higher still. He would take Persephone, daughter of Zeus and Demeter, queen of the dead, wife of Hades, a goddess whose own story of descent, taken rather than chosen, you may already know from elsewhere. She was married. She was a queen in her own right, ruling a kingdom half of every year. None of this mattered to Pirithous. He wanted the wife of the god who ruled death itself, and he asked his friend to help him take her. Theseus agreed. We do not know, from what survives of this story, whether he hesitated, whether some part of him understood that this was different from Helen, that Helen, at least, belonged to the living world, could in theory be pursued the way mortal women were pursued in myths, that do not examine the ethics of pursuit too closely. Persephone belonged to the land of the dead now. She was not simply someone else's. She was the queen of the one kingdom in existence that could not be stolen from without consequence. But he had sworn an oath. And so, the two men who had never been told no went together to the entrance of the underworld, at Tenerum, at the southern tip of the Peloponnese, where a cave mouth opens in the rock, and the local shepherds have always said, in low voices, that it goes all the way down. They went in. Hades knew they were coming. This is the detail the story turns on, that the king of the dead, who rules an entire kingdom of the departed and misses very little of what happens within his own domain, had already heard what these two men intended before they ever reached his hall. He did not stop them at the gate. He did not send anything to bar their way. He welcomed them. "Sit," he said, gesturing to two stone seats near his throne, his voice pleasant, hospitable, the voice of a host who has all the time in the world and no reason at all to hurry. "You have come a long way. Rest a while before we discuss what brought you here." They sat. The chairs were called, in the tellings that survive, the chairs of forgetfulness. They did not look like anything remarkable. Stone, plain, no different from any other seat in the hall of a king who did not need to impress anyone. Theseus and Pirithous lowered themselves into them the way tired travelers lower themselves into any offered seat, grateful for the rest. They did not notice, at first, that they could not rise. Serpents, some tellings say, wound quietly around their ankles and wrists, holding without seeming to grip, present without seeming urgent. Other tellings say it was simpler than that the stone itself had grown around them, patient and total, the way stone does when it has all of eternity to work with and no reason to hurry. And with the binding came the forgetting, not all at once, not violently. It arrived the way the tide arrives, a little further in with each small wave, indistinguishable, moment to moment, only obvious in retrospect. If retrospect is even the right word for a mind that is losing, piece by piece, the thing it would need in order to notice what it has lost. They forgot why they had come. They forgot, eventually, that there had been a reason at all. Years passed. Neither of them could have told you how many. That was the particular cruelty of the punishment. If punishment is even the right word for something that did not announce itself as one, it did not simply take their freedom. It took the part of them that would have known to miss it. Above them, in the world of the living, Athens went on being Athens. Sparta went on being Sparta. Helen grew from the girl Theseus had hidden away into the woman whose face would eventually launch a war he would not live to see. The world turned, entirely indifferent to two men who had believed, with the total confidence of people who have never been refused anything, that the rules simply did not apply to them. They sat. They forgot. They sat some more. Heracles came looking for a dog. That is not a diminishment. It is simply what his final labor required of him, to descend into the underworld and bring back Cerberus, the three-headed hound who guarded the gate, and return him to the world above, without killing him. Heracles had faced worse. He went down expecting difficulty, and found instead two men he recognized, seated in stone, hollowed out, barely themselves. He reached for Theseus first. He took his old friend by the arms and pulled, and the earth, the story says, shook with the effort of it, resisted, held on, and then, at last, gave way. Theseus came free. Something of him. The stories differ on exactly what, and perhaps it does not matter. Stayed behind in the stone, a small permanent cost of the tearing loose. He rose, unsteady, remembering himself in pieces, the way you remember a dream in the seconds after waking, when the shape of it is already dissolving, even as you try to hold on to it. He turned to help Pirithous. The ground would not move for him, whether Hades forbade it directly, or whether the earth itself simply judged the two crimes differently. Theseus had followed a friend's oath into a foolishness that was not, in its origin, his own. Pirithous had wanted, specifically and by name, the wife of the god of that very kingdom. The myths do not entirely agree. What they agree on is the outcome. Theseus rose. Pirithous stayed. Heracles could not free him. No one ever did. Theseus went back to the world of the living, carrying two things he had not carried down into the earth: the memory of what forgetting felt like, and the knowledge of what he had left behind. He had reached for a goddess who did not belong to him, at his friend's request, and paid for it in years he could not account for. His friend had reached for the same thing, more directly, more presumptuously, and paid for it forever. Consider what this story is not. It is not a story about love overcoming the boundary between the living and the dead. It is not a story about grief refusing to accept what death has taken, or a question that needed answering, or a duty that had to be fulfilled by someone. Persephone was never asked what she wanted in this story, any more than she had been asked the first time she was taken. But this time, the story does not even pretend to care what she wanted. She is not a person to Pirithous. She is a category, a daughter of Zeus, a prize equal to his friend's prize, a thing owed to a man who had never once been told he could not have something. The underworld, it turns out, has room for grief. It has room for devotion, for cleverness, for arguments made well enough to move even death itself. It does not have room for entitlement. The chairs are still there, in the telling, waiting, perhaps, for the next man who believes that wanting something badly enough is the same as deserving it. We stay in the Greek world for now, but we move into different territory, away from the epic journeys of heroes and their strategic descents, into something quieter, stranger, and in its own way more devastating. There is a particular kind of grief that is rarely named. It has no common ceremony, no recognized ritual, no culturally sanctioned form of mourning. It is the grief for someone you never had, not the grief of losing a person you loved and lived with, whose voice you knew, whose presence shaped the rooms you both moved through, but the grief of a gap, a shape in the world where someone should have been, an absence that precedes any memory, a loss you carry without ever having had the thing you lost. The grief for someone who was taken before you could know them. Dionysus knew this grief. He was the god of wine and ecstasy, of dissolution and transformation, of the vine and the dance, and the kind of joy that requires a certain amount of forgetting to be possible. He was worshipped in festivals of wild abandon and in quiet libations alike. He was the stranger god, the later rival to Olympus, the one who came from outside. And this outsider quality was baked into his origin story in a way that was both unusual and defining. He had never known his mother. Her name was Semele, a mortal woman, a princess of Thebes, beautiful and human, and entirely unequipped for what was about to happen to her, who had caught the eye of Zeus and become his lover, who had found herself pregnant with a god's child and was living inside that extraordinary, dangerous fact as carefully as she could. Hera knew. Hera, who had been watching Zeus's wandering eye and its consequences for longer than most things had existed, and who had developed a particular expertise in how to make those consequences hurt, came to Semele in disguise. She planted a thought, a very simple thought. "If he truly loves you," she whispered, in the voice of a trusted friend, "ask him to reveal himself to you in his true divine form. Not in the disguise he wears when he visits you, his true form, the way the other gods see him. If he loves you, he will not refuse." Semele asked. Zeus had sworn an unbreakable oath, sworn on the waters of the Styx, the oath no god can break without consequences greater than any lie, to give her whatever she desired. He had sworn it carelessly, in love, in the way people swear things carelessly when they are in love. He tried to refuse. He knew what would happen. He tried to find a way around the oath. There was no way around the oath. He came to her in his true divine form. Thunder, lightning, the full unbearable presence of a god who is also, in some fundamental sense, a force of nature. The light that makes everything else visible, turned on the one who is trying to look at it. Mortal flesh cannot survive the presence of divine fire. Semele burned, but the child she was carrying was already half divine. Zeus snatched him from the flames and sewed him into his own thigh, carried him there, safe, until the child was ready. And when the time came, Dionysus was born from his father's leg. He entered the world without a mother. He never had one. He grew up knowing her only as a story, a woman who had loved his father, a woman who had trusted the wrong advice, a woman who had burned. The stories do not agree on exactly how it came about. The old myths are not court records. They do not give precise timelines or unambiguous motivations. What they agree on is that at some point, Dionysus, who had by then come into his full power, who had wandered the world, who had been worshipped and feared and celebrated across Asia and Greece and beyond, made a decision. His mother was in the underworld. He was going to bring her out. Some traditions say he found the entrance at Lerna, a marshy lake in the Argolid, associated in Greek tradition with depth and darkness, the kind of water that has no visible bottom. Some say he had a guide. Some say he found his way by virtue of being the god he was. Some say he paid a price at the gates, that he left something irreplaceable, traded something of himself for the passage, that even a god must give something to the keeper of the threshold. The details shift. The outcome does not. He descended into the underworld. He found Semele. He brought her back. He took her to Olympus. He stood before Zeus and made whatever argument was necessary. The myths do not preserve the speech, which is a pity, because it must have been extraordinary. And Zeus, moved by something in it, love for Semele, love for his son, or perhaps simply the recognition that this was a thing that was going to happen regardless of whether he agreed, gave his consent. Semele was made divine. She was given a new name, Theon. She was seated among the immortals. She became a goddess because her son refused to let death have what he had never been given the chance to keep. Think carefully about what Dionysus went for. Not a lover he had known and lost. Not a parent whose face he could remember, whose voice was still in his memory, whose presence had shaped the person he became. He went for someone he had never met, for a relationship that had never existed, for the version of his life that should have been there from the beginning and wasn't. He went for the gap, for the shape of something he had never held, and he filled it. There is something in this story that refuses to be entirely categorized as mythology. Something in it that feels less like a story about gods and more like a story about the thing that humans do when they understand, often too late and with great clarity, that a relationship has been stolen from them before it could begin, that the ordinary experience of being known and loved by a particular person, the person who was supposed to be there, was taken away by something that had nothing to do with fault or choice or anything that could have been prevented. Dionysus went to claim what should have been his from the start. He succeeded. Not everyone who went down into the realms of the dead went with a sword, or a spool of thread, or a set of careful instructions from an oracle. Some went with nothing but their eyes. His name, in the language that first told this story, was Maudgaliayana. In China, where the story would eventually take deep and lasting root, he became Mulian. In Japan, Mokuren. The names shift with the telling, the way names do when a story crosses enough borders and enough centuries, but the man underneath them stays the same. He was one of the Buddha's 2 chief disciples, foremost among all the students who gathered around that teacher. In one particular gift, he could see, not the way the rest of us see. His sight was said to reach across every one of the 6 realms of existence: the realm of gods, the realm of jealous spirits, the realm of humans, the realm of animals, the realm of hungry ghosts, and the deepest hells of all, with the kind of clarity that most beings are protected from by the simple mercy of not being able to look. He could fly. He could hear across impossible distances. Of all the Buddha's students, he was said to be the one whose powers most resembled the miraculous. And when his mother died, he did the thing that any powerful, grieving son might do. He looked for her. He searched the realm of the gods first. Perhaps she had been reborn there, rewarded for whatever kindness her life had contained. She was not there. He searched the human realm, the realm of animals. Nothing. He searched further down, into the places his gift allowed him to see. And most beings never have to. He found her in the realm of the hungry ghosts. The hungry ghosts, the preta, in the old language, are not punished with fire. Not in most of the tellings. They are punished with want. Their bellies are vast, distended, permanently and unbearably empty. Their throats are the width of a needle, too narrow for anything to pass, even if anything could be found to swallow. They wander a grey and starving landscape, reaching for food and water that recedes from them or turns to something inedible the instant they are close enough to touch it, forever a single unbridgeable inch from relief. It is not a punishment inflicted from outside, the old teachings say. It is what certain kinds of grasping, certain kinds of hoarding, certain kinds of cruelty toward the hungry when you yourself had plenty, become when carried far enough and unaddressed for long enough. The hungry ghost is not being punished by anyone. She has simply become, in death, the precise shape of what she would not release in life. His mother was there, thin, wild-eyed, reaching for things that were never going to reach her back. He did not hesitate. He flew to her, his gift for once put to the only use he had ever truly wanted it for, and he filled a bowl with rice and brought it to her himself, kneeling in that grey, starving place, holding it out to the mother he had loved and lost, and found again in the worst possible circumstance. She reached for it with both hands. Before the rice reached her mouth, it caught fire in her fingers, turned to embers, to ash, to nothing a starving mouth could use. Exactly like everything else in that realm had always turned to nothing the moment she reached for it. He tried again. The same thing happened. All his power, the flight, the sight that could cross every realm in existence, the gift that made him the most extraordinary of all his teacher's students, could not get one mouthful of rice past his own mother's lips. He went to the Buddha and wept and asked what he had done wrong and what he could possibly do now that even he, with everything he had, was not enough. The Buddha did not tell him his power had failed. He told him it had reached its limit, which is a different thing and worth sitting with. Some griefs, the Buddha said, are not the size of one person's devotion, however powerful that person is. Your mother's binding to that realm was made of more than one wrongdoing, over more than one lifetime, and it will not be undone by more than one man's love, however total. It will take more than you. On the 15th day of the 7th month, the Buddha told him, when the monks of every monastery complete the long retreat of the rains and their practice stands at its clearest and strongest, gather them, make offerings. On that day, not to her directly, but to the whole assembled community, freely and without hesitation. Let the good of that offering move through all of them together, and let what moves through all of them together reach her, because it will carry a weight that nothing you alone can carry. Mokuren did exactly as he was told. He gathered the monks. He made the offering, food, and more than food. The story says he offered it with the whole of himself, not holding anything back, the way, perhaps, his mother once had. And the accumulated goodness of an entire community, focused together on a single act, on a single day, did what one extraordinary son's love and power alone could not. His mother was released. This is why, in China and Japan and across much of the Buddhist world, there is still, every year, a festival held in the middle of the 7th month, Ulambana, Obon, the Ghost Festival, in its plainer translation, the day the realms are said to open a little, the day families set out food for the ones who came before them, light lanterns to guide the dead home for a visit and safely back again, and remember, together, that some debts of love are too large for one person alone to settle. It is, of all tonight's stories, the only one where the solution was never going to be a single person's doing. Not a clever argument, spoken alone into the dark. Not a love so large it moved a king to relent. Not one man's cunning, or one man's grief, or one man's refusal to let go. A whole community gathered, giving freely, on the one day of the year when their collective goodness stood at its strongest. Sometimes that is what it takes. Sometimes the door only opens when enough people together ask it to. Some of the descents in this telling belong to gods or heroes, or men whose names would outlive them by 3,000 years. This one belongs to someone far more ordinary. Psyche was a mortal woman, not a hero in any traditional sense, not a warrior, not a queen, not born with any particular power or gift or divine heritage. She had no sword and no magic and no god on her side. She was simply a person, a young woman of extraordinary beauty, so extraordinary that people had begun to worship her instead of Aphrodite, which was the kind of mistake that had a way of setting very long and very difficult stories in motion. Aphrodite noticed. Aphrodite, who was the goddess of love and had been the most beautiful being in existence for longer than most things had existed, and who did not take the competition well. She sent her son Eros, the god of love, winged and armed with arrows that could strike feelings into anyone and anything, to solve the problem. The instruction was simple enough. Make this girl fall in love with something monstrous, something so terrible that the worshippers would see her destruction and return to the proper object of their devotion. Eros went to do as his mother asked. He saw Psyche, and instead of following his instructions, he fell in love with her himself. What followed from this is a story so layered, so strange, so full of conditions and reversals and impossible requirements that scholars have been arguing about what it means for 2,000 years. But we are here tonight for a specific part of it, for the part that took Psyche to the underworld. Eros had kept himself hidden from her. They were married, or something very like married, secretly, in a palace that appeared from nowhere in a valley, beautiful beyond description, attended by invisible servants, filled with every comfort, and every night Eros came to her in absolute darkness, and she knew him only by touch and voice, and the specific quality of his presence, and she had promised never to light a lamp, never to look at him. Her sisters found out about the marriage and came to visit, and they were jealous in the particular way that beautiful women's sisters in old stories are jealous. Precisely, systematically, devastatingly. They pointed out the obvious. She didn't know who she was sleeping beside in the dark. How could she? It could be anything. It could be a monster. Take a lamp, they said, and a knife. When he is sleeping, look. And if it is what we think it is, something terrible, something that would destroy you, you know what to do. She took the lamp. She waited until she could hear his breathing settle into sleep. She looked. She saw the god of love, asleep and defenseless, and entirely beautiful, his wings folded against his back, his quiver of arrows tipped against the bedside, his face carrying in sleep the particular expression of someone who has finally, after long searching, found what they were looking for and put it down with care. A drop of hot oil from the lamp fell on his shoulder. He woke. He saw the lamp. He saw her face, still half illuminated by it, understanding what she had done, arriving on his features like weather. He left without a word. The palace dissolved around her. She was standing in a field in the middle of the day, with nothing. She searched for him. She wandered. She threw herself on the mercy of Aphrodite, the goddess who had wanted to destroy her, who received her now with a smile that was perfectly composed and entirely cold. You want him back, Aphrodite said. It was not a question. Yes. Then you will have to earn him. I have tasks for you. The first task, a mountain of mixed seeds, lentils and barley and wheat and millet and all the rest, mixed together in a vast heap in the middle of the floor. Sort them by nightfall Psyche sat before the mountain of seeds and felt the enormity of it close over her head. It was not possible. She was a human being with 2 hands, and one day she began to sort, knowing it was futile, because what else was there to do? Ants came, thousands of them, then hundreds of thousands, summoned by some sympathy between them and the girl on the floor. The patience required, the smallness of the work, the way it asked for exactly the quality that ants have in abundance. They sorted the seeds, every grain in its place by dark. Aphrodite saw what had been done, and her smile did not change. The second task. Across the river, on the other bank, rams with golden fleece. Bring back a handful of that fleece. Psyche went to the river and stood on the bank and watched the rams, enormous, bronze-hoofed, mad with the heat of the day, capable of killing her without noticing, and felt the specific texture of an impossible requirement. A green reed spoke to her from the water's edge. "Wait until evening," it said, in the soft, rustling voice of reeds. "In the heat of the day, they are dangerous and crazed. In the evening, they calm. They will drift toward the shade, and the golden fleece catches on the low branches, on the brambles, on the bushes at the water's edge. In the evening, you can gather it from the thorns without approaching the rams at all." She waited. She gathered the fleece from the thorns in the evening light. The third task. A crystal vase. Fill it from the source of the Styx, where the water falls from a cliff at the top of a mountain too steep for human feet, guarded by dragons that never sleep. An eagle saw her standing at the base of the cliff, looking up. An eagle that had perhaps its own reasons for sympathy with impossible love. The eagle of Zeus, who knew something about carrying things to places they had no business going. It took the vase in its talons and flew to the top of the cliff and filled it and brought it back. 3 tasks, 3 impossibilities made possible by help from small things: ants, a reed, an eagle, by the particular grace that arrives when a person is genuinely trying and genuinely stuck. And each time, Aphrodite took what she had brought and looked at it without expression and set it aside and said, "One more thing, the 4th task. Descend to the underworld," Aphrodite said. "Find Persephone, queen of the dead. Ask her to fill this small box with a measure of her beauty. Divine beauty, the beauty that does not age, the beauty that belongs only to the immortal. Bring it back to me." This was the final task, the one Psyche was not meant to survive. But a voice spoke to her. She never knew whose voice, coming from somewhere she couldn't locate, the way advice arrives sometimes from nowhere when it is genuinely needed. "Listen carefully," the voice said. "Here is how it is done. There is an entrance at Lacedaemon, near the place called Taenarus. That is where you will go down. Take 2 coins. 2, not 1. 1 for each crossing of the river, there and back. When Charon, the ferryman, holds out his hand, you must place the coin in his mouth. He cannot take it from you. You must place it there yourself. Take 2 cakes, honeyed barley cakes, soaked in wine and water. 1 for each crossing of Cerberus, who guards the gate. When he comes at you, throw 1. He will stop for it. On your return, throw the other. And then these things above all. When you are inside, you will be offered comfort. A man drowning in the river will call to you to help him. Do not reach out your hand. Women weaving will invite you to sit and rest. Do not sit. Persephone herself will offer you a comfortable chair and fine food. Do not sit in the chair. Do not eat the food. Sit on the ground. Eat only coarse bread. And when Persephone gives you the box, do not open it. Whatever you think is inside, whatever you tell yourself you need from it, whatever reasoning arrives in your mind between the underworld and the surface of the earth, do not open the box. Psyche listened. She memorized each instruction with the care of someone who understands that exact words matter, that the difference between sit on the floor and sit wherever you like is the difference between survival and becoming a permanent resident of the place she was visiting. She went down. The entrance at Tænarus was a crack in the earth, a descent into dark, a passage that wound downward through rock and root and the accumulating weight of everything above. She walked by the light of nothing, by the sound of her own footsteps, and the memory of the instructions and the sheer forward momentum of someone who has nothing left to lose except the thing she came for. She reached the river, Charon, ancient and vast and silent, moving the great flatboat across the black water with a pole. He looked at her the way ferrymen look at passengers, without curiosity, without welcome, with the professional assessment of a man whose job requires him not to ask questions. She placed the coin between his lips. He took her across. Cerberus, 3 heads, 3 sets of eyes reflecting nothing, 3 mouths that could take an arm at the shoulder. She threw the first cake. 1 head went down, then the second, then the third. All 3 occupied. All 3 rendered temporarily more interested in the food than in her. She walked through the gate, the drowning man in the river, reaching toward her. She kept walking, the women weaving, calling to her. She kept walking. The hall of Persephone. Persephone, queen of the dead, daughter of Demeter, the one who was taken before she was old enough to know how to refuse, who had made her peace with the kingdom that's all given to her by eating its fruit and binding herself to it, received Psyche with the particular grace of a ruler who has seen many strange things arrive at her court and has learned to be unsurprised by any of them. Psyche sat on the floor. She ate coarse bread. She made her request. Persephone looked at her for a long moment. Then she took the box and filled it and sealed it and handed it back. No explanation, no condition. Just the box, returned. Perhaps Persephone understood something about impossible love and the lengths it goes to. Perhaps she felt, in some deep and unspoken way, a kinship with a girl sitting on the floor of her hall who had come all this way and refused the chair. Psyche turned back, past the women weaving, past the drowning man, past Cerberus, who received the second cake with the same focused attention as the first, past Charon, the second coin placed with the same care as the first, up through the rock and root and dark, up toward the light. The surface of the earth appeared ahead of her. She could see it, the grey brightness of the upper world, the smell of air that had not spent time underground. And then a thought arrived. She had been through so much. She was exhausted and dirty and barely recognizable as the person she had been at the beginning of all this. If she opened the box, just a little, just enough to touch the divine beauty inside, just enough to refresh herself before she arrived at Aphrodite's door. Surely that was not so much to ask. She had earned it. She had done every impossible thing that had been required of her. She opened the box. There was no beauty inside. There was only sleep. The deep, death-heavy sleep of the underworld. The kind that does not distinguish between the living and the dead. That does not care about the difference. It took her instantly. She fell at the threshold of the living world, at the very boundary, neither quite dead nor quite alive. Eros found her. He had recovered from his burn. He had been searching. He arrived at the threshold and found her on the ground and gathered the sleep back into the box and sealed it and woke her with the lightest touch of one of his arrows. She opened her eyes. He stood there. He went to Zeus and made his case. And Zeus, who understood something about love that required advocacy in divine courts, made Psyche immortal. She drank the ambrosia and became a goddess. She and Eros were married properly in Olympus, with Aphrodite in attendance. Aphrodite, it is said, danced at the wedding. The moral of this story is contested. It has been argued over for 2,000 years. Some say it is about the impossibility of keeping love in the dark, about the human need to see and be seen. Some say it is about the trials that love requires. Some say the box was always going to be opened, that the instruction not to open it was a test rather than a genuine command. But perhaps what matters most tonight is simpler than any of that. She went into the underworld with nothing but careful instructions and a willingness to follow them exactly. She came back with the box, and what she had been carrying, without knowing it, was not the box at all. It was herself, the version of herself that had done every impossible thing and kept going, that had accepted help from ants and reeds and eagles without pride, that had sat on the floor of the underworld and eaten coarse bread and refused the comfortable chair. That is what she brought back. And now, the one you may already know, the most famous, the one that has been painted and sculpted and set to music and retold so many times that it has become less a story and more a kind of permanent ache in the Western imagination. A story so precisely constructed around a single unbearable moment that even people who have never heard it in full seem to carry it somewhere in them. Some knowledge of it that arrives without explanation. Some recognition when the moment comes. His name was Orpheus. And if you know one thing about him, you probably know that he could play. Not play the way musicians play. Not skill, not craft, not even genius in the ordinary sense of that word. Something older than any of those things. Something that did not have to do with practice or technique. Something that had always been in him the way the sound of water is in water. When Orpheus played his lyre, rivers slowed. Trees pulled their roots from the earth and leaned toward him. Stones softened. Wild animals forgot what they were and lay down at his feet. The wolf beside the rabbit, the hawk beside the sparrow. It is said that when he was very young, sitting by the river and playing for no one in particular, the fish came to the surface of the water to listen. The world could not help but attend to him. It was simply what the world did when Orpheus played. He married a woman named Eurydice. We know almost nothing about her. This is itself one of the quiet tragedies inside the larger one. She exists in the story almost entirely as an absence, defined by what she's not, rather than what she is. We know her name. We know she was loved. We know that she died on what may have been their wedding day. A snake, a bite, a warm afternoon that ended in the specific way that warm afternoons sometimes end without warning. And Orpheus, who could move the stones, who could slow the rivers, who could make the fish come to the surface to listen, could do nothing. Music, which had always been the answer, was not the answer for this. He played after she died. Of course he did. It was the only thing he had. But the music that had always opened the world now opened only grief. People who heard him playing in the weeks after her death said afterwards that they wished they hadn't. Not because the music was ugly, but because it was too precisely the sound of a person whose world had been halved. Because it was the sound of someone playing to an audience that was no longer there. He played until he understood what he was going to do. And then he stopped playing and went. There was an entrance to the Underworld. There always is in these stories, though the location shifts. A cave, a crack in the earth, a place where the living world and the dead world press up against each other, close enough that the boundary becomes crossable if you want it badly enough. Orpheus went to it. He sat down at the entrance, and he began to play. What he played was not a performance. It was not composed. It was the direct expression of a grief so specific and so total that it needed no arrangement, no structure, no thought. It simply came out of him, the way a wound bleeds. He played the shape of the silence where she used to be. He played the weight of the morning without her in it. He played the particular quality of loving someone so completely that their absence reorganizes the entire world around the space they left. The shades of the dead gathered at the sound and listened. Tantalus forgot his eternal thirst for the first time in his endless punishment. Sisyphus sat down on his boulder. The Furies, those inexorable divine avengers, those ministers of justice who do not feel, who do not relent, whose faces are not made for weeping, found their cheeks wet. Persephone, queen of the dead, leaned forward on her throne without realizing she had done it. And Hades himself, the god who rules the realm of the dead, who has received everyone who has ever lived, who has never once made an exception, who has sat unmoved while entire civilizations came to him and begged, sat very still and felt something happening in him that he did not have a word for. He called for Eurydice. She came forward from among the dead, newly arrived, still limping from the wound on her heel, still wearing the quality of someone who has not yet fully understood what has happened to them. "Take her," said Hades. Something in the way he said it suggested that even he could not entirely account for his own decision. "But there is a condition. She will follow you back to the world of the living. You will walk ahead. You will not look back at her, not until you have both fully crossed into the light. If you turn and look before she has completely crossed the threshold, she returns to me, and I will not release her a second time." Orpheus walked. He began the long ascent through the passage between the worlds, back toward the living earth, and he listened for her behind him. He could hear nothing. The dead make no sound. They leave no footprint. They stir no air. They are as silent as the absence they represent, as silent as the space where someone used to be. He was walking back toward the world with someone he loved directly behind him, and he could hear nothing. Nothing to indicate her presence. Nothing to confirm that he was not walking alone. The passage was long. The dark was complete. He had no way of knowing how far they had come, or how far they had still to go. and his mind, which was his greatest gift, and which had always been his companion, and which was now, perhaps, his undoing. His mind began to work in the silence. What if she is not there? What if Hades gave me a ghost that dissolved at the edge of the underworld? What if I am climbing back to the world alone, and I do not know it yet? And the moment I arrive, I will turn, and there will be nothing. And the knowing of it will be the worst moment I have ever lived. What if the cruelty of this condition, this thing he asked of me, is not a test of my love, but a way of making me see the worst of it from a new angle? The light appeared, far ahead at first, then closer. The grey brightening of the world's entrance, the particular quality of air that has not spent time underground, the smell of stone and cold, and the almost surface of the earth. He was nearly there. She was nearly there. He turned. She was there. She had been there the whole time, right behind him, exactly where she should have been, close enough that he could have taken her hand. Her face, in the first and last moment he saw it, wore an expression that contained too many things at once to be named. She had been there. She knew what was about to happen now. She had time to look at him, really look at him, before the world took her. She said his name, or perhaps she said farewell. The versions differ on this single word, and perhaps that is because the moment is the kind of moment that different people hear differently, that contains different words depending on who is listening. She was drawn back into the dark. In a moment, she was gone. He tried to follow. He went back to the entrance and he played again. The same grief, now compounded, now containing the specific weight of having had her and lost her a second time, which is its own particular kind of pain. The ferryman would not take him a second time. There are rules, even in the kingdom of the dead. Even mercy has limits. He walked back into the world. He spent the rest of his life beside rivers, playing music that no one who heard it ever forgot, and no one who heard it could fully bear. He refused to love again. The stories say he mourned until the end. Until the end came violently, at the hands of those who felt that his grief had made him unreachable, had taken him out of the world of the living in all but body. And after his death, after everything, Orpheus descended to the underworld one final time. Not as a visitor, as one of the dead. And in the Elysian fields, Eurydice was waiting. And this time, at last, he could look at her. As long as he wanted. For as long as there was anything at all. We have left Greece now. We have left the Mediterranean world entirely. The warm blue sea, the olive trees, the marble temples, the elaborate cosmology of gods who behave like complicated people. We have crossed the Atlantic, crossed the Americas, arrived in a world that the Greeks did not know existed. We are in the Pacific Northwest of what is now North America, in the world of the Nez Perce people, in the high plateaus and river valleys and deep forests of what we now call Idaho and Oregon and Washington, in a landscape shaped by the great salmon rivers and the mountains and the particular quality of light that comes through conifer trees in the early morning. A world that has been lived in for 10,000 years or more, that has its own deep history and its own accumulated wisdom and its own way of telling the things that need to be told. In this world, there is a great trickster. His name is Coyote. You may know him already. He appears in the stories of many Native American peoples in many different forms, causing trouble and resolving it, doing large and dangerous things for humanity, and then immediately doing something foolish that complicates everything. He is not a villain. He is not a hero. He is something more honest than either. A figure who is deeply, specifically human in all his contradictions, clever and stupid simultaneously, capable of great courage and of spectacular failure, well-intentioned and chaotic, the trickster who is also always the one who genuinely wants things to be better. He had a wife. She died. And what happened next? Listen carefully, because you have heard this before. He followed her. He followed her spirit down into the land of the shadow people, the Nez Perce land of the dead, a world that exists alongside the living one, not underground exactly, but sideways, in a kind of parallel existence where the departed go and continue something like their lives in a diminished, shadowy form. A world just beyond the edge of sight, just past the boundary of what the living can perceive directly. He crossed into it. He found her there. He found all the dead there, moving through their shadow world, going through the familiar motions of living but faintly, like a fire seen through thick smoke, present but not fully there, real but not in the way that the living are real. He found her. The spirit chief of the land of the dead looked at Coyote with the expression of someone who has seen this before. Not many times. It is not a common thing for the living to find their way to the Shadowland, but enough times to know what it means, what it requires, what it will probably cost. I will give her back to you, the spirit chief said. The directness of it was almost startling. No argument, no refusal, no lengthy negotiation. Simply, I will give her back. But there is a condition. Coyote waited. She will travel with you back to the world of the living, but she will be invisible. You will not be able to see her or hear her or touch her. Not at first. You must simply trust that she is there, walking behind you, because I am telling you she is there, and I am not lying to you. You must walk home. Do not try to touch her. Do not try to see her. Do not try to make yourself sure of her in any way. Walk for 5 days, sleep 5 nights, and on a 5th morning, in your own home, in a place where you live together, you may turn and look and she will be there, solid and present, returned. Coyote agreed. He turned and began the long walk home. The first day he walked in silence. He could not see her. He could not hear her. The path behind him, when he did not look at it, was the same path it had always been. The air was still. There was no sound of footsteps, no warmth of a presence nearby, no signal of any kind that he was not entirely alone. He kept walking. He believed she was there. He walked. The second day was harder. The silence of the path behind him had been manageable on the first day, because the first day he had the freshness of the task, the forward momentum of someone who has just been given what they most wanted and is carrying it home. On the second day, the silence had more time to work. It was the same silence, but accumulated now, 2 days deep. He kept walking. The third day, the silence was enormous by now. It had become a presence in itself, the particular weight of an absence that you keep expecting to resolve into something and keeps not resolving. He knew, in the part of him that reasoned, that she was there. He had been told. The spirit chief had not lied to him. The condition was clear, and the logic of it was sound. But knowing and feeling are not the same thing. The gap between them on the third day was very wide. He thought about what he was carrying home, the invisible, inaudible, untouchable fact of her, the presence that gave no evidence of itself. He thought about arriving at their home on the 5th morning and turning, and what it would be like when she was there, solid and present, looking at him the way she used to look at him. 2 more days, 2 more sleeps. He kept walking. The 4th day was quiet. He did not think much on the 4th day. He simply walked, 1 foot and then the other, the path unreeling before him, the familiar country coming back into view. He was close to home now. He could feel it, not just in the geography, but in some other way, the way you feel home before you see it. 1 more sleep. He stopped for the night. He lay down. He could not sleep for a long time. He lay in the dark and listened to the silence behind him and tried to feel, in the silence, something that might be her. He could feel nothing, but he did not move. He lay still until morning. The 5th day. He was nearly home. The path descended toward the valley where he lived. The trees thinned. He could see the smoke of the village, distant but real. He could see the particular shape of the hill that he had looked at every morning of his life in that place. He was almost there. He thought about what he had promised. He thought about the condition. 5 sleeps, 5 mornings. The 5th morning here in your own home. He had slept 4 nights. He'd walked 4 days. He was on the 5th day. He was almost home. Almost. His hand moved. He reached behind him. He felt something. A warmth. A presence. The very edge of something that was almost there. That was arriving, that was so close. Nothing. He stood on the path in the morning light with his arm extended and his hand open, and the emptiness of the air where she had been. And he understood what had happened. And he stood there for a very long time. In some versions of this story, it is said that after he lost her the 2nd time, Coyote wept. The weeping of Coyote is not a small thing. He was the trickster. He was the one who caused trouble and sorted it out and caused more trouble and kept moving, who was rarely still long enough to be caught by any feeling. But in this story, he was still. He wept. He wept because he had been so close. 1 morning. He had needed 1 more morning. He had been so close. You heard this story before, in tonight's telling. You heard it in Greece, in the story of Orpheus and Eurydice, the man who goes to the land of the dead for love, who is told not to look, not to reach, not to seek reassurance before the moment of return, who cannot hold the trust required, who reaches or looks a moment too soon. Orpheus looked back on the threshold of the upper world. Coyote reached on the path home, 1 sleep short of safety. These traditions never met. The Nez Perce people and the ancient Greeks had no contact, no knowledge of each other's existence, no common source they might have drawn this story from. And yet, the same story, the same love, the same condition, the same failure, the same unbearable gap between knowing and feeling. And what happens in that gap? Perhaps this is not a coincidence. Perhaps this is what love does when it is tested at its furthest extreme. Perhaps the gap between knowing and feeling is a universal feature of the human experience of trust. And the story of what happens in that gap is not a Greek story or a Nez Perce story, but simply a human story, growing from the same root in every soil. 2 tellings, tonight, of the same unbearable moment. There is at least one more that I know of. In Japan, a god named Izanagi followed his wife Izanami into the land of the dead, was given the same instruction every one of these travelers has been given, and broke it in the same way, at the same kind of threshold, for the same reason. You may remember it. We sat with Izanami on the other side of that very story in another of our nights together, and heard how it looked from where she stood. I won't tell it again here. One telling is enough for a story to have earned its place at the fire. But its shape belongs in this room with the other two, all the same. Perhaps there are more I haven't found yet, pressed into clay somewhere, or carried in a language that has since gone quiet. Perhaps this exact grief has grown, unprompted, in every soil that ever buried its dead, and then, however briefly, however foolishly, expected them to almost come back. We travel east now, to the courts of ancient India, to the world of the great Sanskrit epic, the Mahabharata, one of the longest and most complex works of literature ever written, a vast tangle of war and dharma and divine intervention and human desire. Embedded within it, told as a story within a story within a story, is a tale that has been celebrated in India for 2,000 years. It is about a woman who defeated death, not through music, not through a trick or a divine gift or a passport made of gold, through argument, through the extraordinary precise deployment of intelligence in service of love, through the refusal to stop walking and the refusal to stop talking, and the particular clarity of mind that comes when you have known since before your wedding day that a specific morning was coming, and you have had an entire year to prepare your thoughts. Her name was Savitri, a princess, the daughter of a king who had prayed for a child for many years before she was given. She was named for a goddess. She was educated the way few women of her era were educated, in philosophy, in scripture, in the art of argument, in all the things that her father thought the world owed a child who had been prayed for so long. She grew up extraordinary, so extraordinary in fact, that when the time came for her to be married, she was so intimidating that no suitable man came to ask for her hand. The other kings and princes kept their distance. They saw in her something that made them feel, correctly, that they would not measure up. Her father sent her out into the world to find her own husband. She traveled for a year into the forests and far kingdoms looking. She found a young man named Satyavan. He was living with his blind father in a simple hermitage in the forest, an exiled prince, his family's kingdom taken from them, living quietly and without complaint in the woods. He was handsome and good, and the kind of person who makes the world better simply by being in it. She came home and told her father she had found the one she wanted. And the sage Narada, who happened to be visiting and who knew things that other people didn't, looked at her with an expression that contained something she did not want to see. That man, Narada said carefully, is the best of men. There is no fault in your choice. Everything you have seen in him is real. But there is one thing you must know before you proceed. Savitri waited. He will die in exactly 1 year. Savitri's father asked her to choose again. There were other men, other futures, longer stories she could walk into. She shook her head. I have chosen once, she said. I will not choose again. She married Satyavan, and began to count. She spent the year paying attention. Every morning was a morning she knew the number of. She did not share the count with anyone. Not with her husband, not with her father, not with the other people at the hermitage who had welcomed her with such warmth. She kept it to herself, and she used it to attend more carefully. She memorized him, not in the sentimental way of someone holding on to something they are afraid of losing, but in the precise, deliberate way of someone who is making an inventory, storing the details. She was also thinking. She had an entire year, and she used it. She considered everything she knew about Yama, the god of death, the god of Dharma, the one who came for souls when their time arrived. She thought about what moved him, what impressed him, what he valued. She considered arguments and discarded them and considered better ones. She built, in the quiet of a year of ordinary days, a case. She did not know exactly what she was building it for. She built it anyway. On the last day of the year, she woke before dawn and performed her prayers with unusual thoroughness. She asked her father-in-law for permission to accompany her husband into the forest. She had never asked for anything in the entire year she had spent at the hermitage, and he could not refuse a request from someone who had never made one. They went into the forest together, she and Satyavan. He was cheerful, unhurried, completely unaware. He chopped wood, he piled it. He worked with the ordinary pleasure of someone doing familiar work on an ordinary day. He stopped mid-task and held his head. He came to where she was sitting and laid down with his head in her lap. "I feel strange," he said. "My head." She arranged him carefully. She put her arms around him. She held him while he died. She felt it when the soul left. The weight changed, not became less, but became different, became the weight of a body that was no longer a person. She looked up. Yama was standing in the forest clearing, dark, enormous, riding his water buffalo with the ease of someone who has done this so many times that the animal knows the way, his noose in his hand, his messengers arrayed behind him. The god of death, in person, for this particular soul. He reached into the body in her lap and drew out Satyavan's soul, the size of a thumb, glowing like something that had always been a light but had just been discovered, and bound it in his noose. He turned south, toward his realm. Savitri stood up. She followed. Yama walked, and Savitri walked behind him. Through the forest, out of the forest, onto the road that dead souls travel, the road that leads away from everything living. She was not dead. She had no business on this road, but her feet kept moving. Yama noticed her after a time. He stopped. "Go back," he said. He was not unkind. He was matter-of-fact, in the way that the god of death must be matter-of-fact, must have learned to be, dealing daily with people who are not prepared for him. Your husband's funeral rites need to be performed. You are needed there. Go back and do what must be done, and live your life. This is the way of things. Savitri looked at him. "Where my husband goes, I go," she said. "This is the Dharma of a wife. I follow him." Yama was the god of Dharma, as well as the god of death. He could not dismiss this argument. It had the precise quality that the best arguments have. It was made in a language he spoke. It appealed to something he could not in good conscience contradict. He was, despite himself, impressed. "You speak well," he said. "Ask me for a boon. Anything you like, except the life of Satyavan." She thought for a moment. Restore my father-in-law's eyesight, she said. He's been blind for years, and it weighs on him. Done, said Yama. Now go home. She followed. He stopped again. You are stubborn, he said, and there was something in his voice that was not displeasure, something that had not been there the first time. Another boon. Still not the life of Satyavan. Restore my father-in-law's kingdom, she said. It was taken from him unjustly. Done. Now go home. She followed. She talked as she walked. She did not fill the silence with pleading or with weeping. She spoke about Dharma, about the nature of righteousness and the duties of the just. She spoke the way someone speaks when they have spent a year preparing what they are going to say. She spoke precisely and clearly, and with the particular authority of a person who has thought about something very carefully and knows what they think. Yama listened. He could not help it. He was the god of Dharma. What she was saying was not wrong. He found himself engaged in the argument despite himself. He asked questions. She answered them. She had thought about this more than he had. Another boon, he said. One more, not the life of Satyavan. Savitri paused. She took a breath. She chose her words with the care of a person who has been waiting a year to say them. Grant me children, she said. Many children. From my husband Satyavan. Yama said yes. He said it before he had fully thought it through. The conversation had the quality of conversations, where the other person is slightly more prepared than you are, and you find yourself 3 steps further along than you intended to be. He stood still. He thought about what he had just promised. He turned around. Savitri was looking at him with the expression of someone who has just won a game that the other player didn't realize they were playing. Yama looked at the soul in his noose. He looked at the woman in front of him. He looked at the soul. Children from your husband Satyavan, he said slowly. Yes, said Savitri. He untied the knot. Satyavan's soul drifted free, back the way they had come, back toward the forest, and the body lying in it. You have defeated me, said Yama. There was something in the way he said it, a quality, not of bitterness, but of something closer to respect, perhaps even something closer to relief, as if the defeat, coming from this particular direction, was not entirely unwelcome. He turned back south and continued on his way. Savitri walked back through the forest. When she arrived at the place where she had left Satyavan's body, he was stirring. He woke like someone waking from a very deep sleep, confused about the hour. The light all wrong. Asking why she had let him sleep so long, she said it was nothing. She helped him up. They walked home. Her father-in-law met them at the edge of the hermitage. He could see. He blinked and looked at his son, and looked at the woman his son had married, and said nothing for a long time. A messenger arrived. The father-in-law's usurper had died. His kingdom was restored. Savitri said nothing about any of it for a while. She let the good fortune arrive as it arrived. She let the blessings settle into the world the way things settle when they have been waited for. She had not looked back. She had not doubted. She had not reached for something before it was time. She had simply walked and talked and kept her mind clear. And she had won. We travel north now, deep north, to a world of ice and fire, of frost giants and world trees, of gods who know how they will die and go on living anyway. We are in Asgard. the hall of the Norse gods, and something has gone wrong. Balder. You need to understand who Balder was before the story can land the way it should. He was the most beloved of all the Aesir, the Norse gods. And this is not a minor designation. The Norse gods were not, as a rule, the kind of beings who inspired warm feelings. They were powers, fierce, complex, associated with forces that did not particularly care about human feelings. Odin was inscrutable and dangerous. Thor was strong and sometimes brutal. Loki was chaos that had learned to smile. Balder was different. He was the god of light and purity, and what we might call summer's benevolence, the specific quality of good things being as they should be, of the world not fighting you. He was beautiful in the particular way that the Norse valued beauty, not soft, not delicate, but radiantly, solidly good. When he entered a room, the room became better. When he spoke, people felt that the thing they had been worried about was probably going to be all right. Everything loved him, not metaphorically. Everything. Every tree, every stone, every metal and plant and animal. He was loved by the world itself. And then he began to dream of his own death. The dreams came every night. The same dream, in different forms, but always with the same end. Balder dying. Balder gone. The light leaving Asgard. His mother Frigg noticed. Frigg, who was Odin's wife and the queen of the gods, and who loved her son with the specific intensity of a mother who knows something is wrong and intends to do something about it. She went out into the world. She asked everything that existed to swear an oath that it would not harm Balder. Every rock and tree and plant and creature, an element of fire and water and air, every weapon and every tool and every natural force. She went to all of them and she asked, and they swore, because who could refuse Frigg, and who could bear the idea of being the thing that harmed Balder? Everything swore. Balder became invulnerable. The gods made a game of it, standing in a ring around him and throwing things, rocks and branches and hammers and spears, and laughing as everything bounced off without effect. He stood in the middle of it beaming, and the laughter was real, and the joy was real, because they had won. They had found the trick that kept the dream from coming true. But Frigg had not asked the mistletoe. It was so small, so inconsequential. Growing on the branches of an oak tree at the edge of the forest, a small pale plant with small pale berries, neither tree nor ground plant, living in the between space with no clear category. She had looked at it and thought, this is too small to matter, and moved on. Loki found out. Loki, who was chaos given a name and a face, who had been part of Asgard long enough that everyone had stopped remembering to be afraid of him, who had his own long relationship with Balder that the myths hint at but never fully explain. He found the blind god, Huda, standing at the edge of the ring, unable to participate in the game because he could not see what he was throwing. Here, said Loki, appearing at his elbow. Let me guide your hand. I have a dart. Small, nothing to it. Let me help you join the game. He placed the mistletoe dart in Huda's hand. He guided the throw. The dart crossed the ring. Balder looked surprised. The way people look when something hurts unexpectedly. The way light looks when it goes out. He fell. The laughter stopped. The ring of gods stood in silence. The light went out of Asgard in a moment and did not come back. Frigg spoke into the silence. Her voice was very steady. It was the voice of someone who has heard the worst possible thing and is still standing, because not standing is not an option. Is there anyone, she said, who will ride to hell and ask for my son back? Who will offer whatever is asked? Not Thor, not Tyr, not Odin himself, who had known this was coming. Odin, who had ridden to the edge of hell before the events he knew were approaching, and raised a dead Volva and asked her what he needed to know. Not even Odin stepped forward. A god named Hermod stepped forward. He was not one of the famous ones. He was not celebrated the way Thor and Tyr and even Loki were celebrated. He occupied, in Asgard, the particular position of someone who is trusted and present and capable, and not particularly the subject of songs. He simply stepped forward when the question was asked. That was the thing he did. Odin gave him Sleipnir, his own horse, the 8-legged horse that could go anywhere, that could travel between worlds, that could carry a rider to places that were not reachable by any other means. Hermod mounted and bent low over Sleipnir's neck and rode. For 9 days and 9 nights, he rode downward and deeper, through valleys that grew darker as he descended, through a cold that was not the cold of winter, but the cold of a place that has never had warmth to lose. The darkness was so complete that he could not see his own hands on the reins. He navigated by feel, by the motion of the horse beneath him, by the particular direction that downward always is. On the 9th night, he came to the river Gurl, the river that bounds the kingdom of hell, dark water, flowing with purpose, spanned by a bridge covered in glittering gold. Standing at the bridge was a maiden, Mudgudur, the guardian of the bridge of the dead, whose job was to count the dead as they crossed. She looked at Hermod. She looked at Sleipnir. The dead who crossed yesterday, she said, made less noise than you alone. You do not have the look of the dead. What are you, and why are you here? I am Hermod, son of Odin, he said. I am riding to hell to seek Balder. Have you seen him? She had. He had crossed this bridge not long before, she said. He had gone north and down. She pointed the way. Sleipnir gathered himself and crossed the bridge, and Hermod rode north and down until he reached the gates of Hell's realm. The gates were high, and they were shut. Sleipnir gathered himself, all 8 legs, all his divine horse strength, and leaped, cleared the gates entirely, landed on the other side. Balder was there, sitting in the place of highest honor in Hell's great hall, by the tradition of hospitality that even the Queen of the Dead observes for her most distinguished residents, pale and still and present, looking like himself, like the god of light, even here, even in the lightless kingdom, but with the specific quality of someone who is no longer moving toward anything. Hermod sat with him through the night. He sat with Balder's wife Nanna, who had died of grief when Balder fell, and had come here with him. He sat in the hall of hell, and ate, and drank, and kept the dead company through the long, unchanging night of that place. In what passed for morning, he went to find Hell herself. Hell, the ruler of this realm, half her face the color of living skin, and half the color of a corpse, the one who had given her name to the place she governed. She looked at Hermod with the patience of someone who is not in any hurry about anything. He made his case. Balder is mourned, he said, by everything, not by Asgard alone, by every being in all 9 worlds, every creature, every stone, every root and branch and drop of water. No death has ever been mourned the way this death is mourned. If you were to weigh the grief against the justice of keeping him here, the grief would be heavier. Hell listened. She did not hurry him. When he was done, she was quiet for a long time. If what you say is true, she said at last, then I will release him. Send word to the 9 worlds. If every single thing, every being, every stone, every root, every living thing, and every unliving thing weeps for Balder, I will send him back. I will believe that the living world truly wants him, and he may go. But if even one thing refuses, one stone, one tree, one creature, one person, then he stays with me. Hermod rode back to Asgard with the answer. The gods sent messengers out into all 9 worlds, in every direction, to everything that could be asked. And everything wept. The people wept. The animals wept. The trees wept. You have perhaps seen the way trees drip on cold mornings. The moisture that collects on bark and leaves and runs down like tears. This is why, the Norse said, the trees are still weeping for Balder. The metals wept. The stones wept. Even the things that could not be said to feel, felt. The grief was real, and it was everywhere. Everything wept, except one. In a cave, the messengers found it at last, after they had been everywhere else, after they had gathered tears from things that had never been asked for anything before. In a cave lived an old woman. She called herself Tuk. She was bent and grey, and she looked at the messengers with eyes that had nothing warm in them. Balder never did anything for me, she said. Let Hel keep what she has. I'll not weep. The messengers went back to Asgard. Hel kept her promise. Balder stayed. The old woman in the cave, the stories say, was Loki. The same hand that had given Herder the mistletoe dart was the hand that refused the one tear that would have undone it. The one who had set this in motion was also the one who ensured it could not be reversed. One voice in all of existence, among every stone and root and animal and person and God. One voice said no, and that was enough. Hermod rode back to Asgard alone. He had done everything right. He had ridden 9 days into darkness. He had cleared the gates of hell. He had sat with the dead and made the case that needed to be made. He had brought back the answer that almost worked. Almost. Balder will come back. The Norse knew this. After Ragnarok, after the great ending that the Norse saw coming, the twilight of the gods, and the end of this age of the world, after the fire and the flood and the final battle, in the new world that grows from the old one's bones, Balder will walk out of hell into the green light. He is not lost forever. He is just not coming back yet. And Hermod, who stepped forward when no one else did, who rode into the dark for nothing more complicated than duty, for the simple fact that someone needed to go. Hermod came home without the thing he went for, and the light stayed out of Asgard, and winter came. We leave the cold, we leave the snow, and the dark Norse halls, and the long winter of Asgard's grief, and we travel south and west, to a world of hot green jungle, and volcanic mountains and cities, built from the labor of civilizations that lasted for thousands of years. We are in the world of the ancient Maya, in the hot, dense, extravagantly alive landscape of what is now Guatemala and southern Mexico, the land of saber trees and quetzal birds, and the rivers that run rust red from the volcanic soil. a world of extraordinary complexity and sophistication, whose mathematicians understood zero, whose astronomers mapped the movements of Venus with extraordinary precision, whose cities were as large as anything in the ancient world, and whose most sacred text, the Popol Vuh, the Book of the Council, the creation story of the Quiche Maya, contains one of the most extraordinary descent narratives in all of human mythology. Not the story of one person going into the underworld, the story of two brothers who went into the underworld, let themselves be killed, and came back anyway, and in doing so, changed everything. Before the hero twins, there was their father. His name was Hunahpu, one Hunahpu. He and his brother were gifted players of the Mayan ball game, a game played with a heavy rubber ball in stone courts, with elaborate rules and enormous cultural significance. Not merely a sport, a ritual, a performance of the cosmic order, the movement of celestial bodies expressed in the movement of a ball between players. They played so well and so enthusiastically that the sound of their ball striking the stone court echoed downward through the layers of the earth and reached Xibalba. Xibalba, the Mayan underworld. Say it with the emphasis the Quiche give it. Xibalba, a word that sounds like something going underground. The place of fright. That is what the name means roughly. Not merely the land of the dead, but the place of active, intentional terror, ruled by lords who took pleasure in the discomfort of those who came to them. The lords of Xibalba had names. 1 death and 7 death at the top. And below them, Hun came, and Vukub came, and Shikiripat, and Kuchumakik, and a dozen more, each one governing a particular kind of suffering. The lords of illness, the lords of poverty, the lords of pain, a committee of death, elaborate and specific. They were annoyed by the noise of the ball game above them. They sent a summons. Hunahpu and his brother went. They failed the tests that waited for them at the entry. They greeted the mannequins that lined the road to Xibalba as if they were real lords, embarrassing themselves at the first hurdle. They entered the dark house and found no light. They suffered through the cold house, the firehouse, the house of bats. The lords of Xibalba defeated them, sacrificed them, hung their heads from trees. This is the part of the story that might seem like an ending. It is not. A young woman named Ixquic, Blood Woman, the daughter of one of the Xibalba lords, heard about the head in the gourd tree. She was curious. She went to look at it. The skull of Hunahpu spoke to her. It spat into her hand. She became pregnant. Her father wanted her killed. Instead, she fled Xibalba, went to the surface world, to the grandmother of Hunahpu, and proved herself, and was accepted, and gave birth to twin sons in the world of the living. Their names were Hunahpu and Xbalanque, the hero twins, born in the living world, born of a woman who had left death to give them life, born already containing the story that had been interrupted, already carrying, without knowing it yet, the mission they had not been given. They grew. They were extraordinary in the particular way that the Maya valued. Intelligent, adaptable, quick thinking, gifted at finding the angle that no one else had noticed. They discovered their father's ball game equipment hidden in the rafters of the grandmother's house, and they began to play. The sound went down through the earth. The lords of Xibalba heard it. They sent the summons again. The twins went. But these twins were not their father. Where Hunahpu had greeted the mannequins as lords, the hero twins walked past them without acknowledgement, greeting only the actual lords, calling each by name, demonstrating from the first moment that they knew where they were and could not be easily deceived. The lords tried anyway. The dark house. No light, no way to see. A cigar that must be kept burning all night without being consumed. The twins put fireflies at the tips of their cigars. In the morning, the cigars were intact. The lords stared. The cold house. A place of absolute cold, of ice and wind, of the particular cold that comes from beneath the world. The twins survived it. How? The story does not say precisely. They survived it. The firehouse. The twins were unburned. The house of jaguars. The lords gave the twins bones to give to the jaguars, and the jaguars left them alone. The house of bats. This is where they lost. Or rather, this is where the story entered its most extraordinary passage. Camazotz, the death bat, descended from the darkness of the house. Camazotz, who had a single purpose and the patience of something that lives in absolute dark. Hunahpu put his head outside his blowgun, where he was sheltering, to see if dawn had come. Camazotz took his head. Xbalanque woke in the dark, and his brother had no head, and dawn had not come. He did not panic. He called to the animals of the forest, and they brought him a carved squash, and he shaped it and placed it on his brother's shoulders. And Hunahpu walked into the ball court the next morning with a squash for a head. During the game, while the lords of Xibalba were distracted, Xbalanque sent a rabbit across the court. The lords watched the rabbit, thinking it was the ball. He used the moment to recover his brother's actual head from where it hung above the court. He attached it. The game continued. But the twins understood during the game something that required a fundamental shift in strategy. They could not win by surviving indefinitely. The lords of Xibalba had been doing this for too long and were too inventive and too patient. Every trial the twins passed, the lords would invent a new one. Every trap they escaped, a new trap would be laid. The game was designed to be played forever, and the lords would never run out of variations. Surviving was not the same as winning. They needed a different game entirely. They sent word ahead to two seers, two old men, who were to tell the lords of Xibalba something specific when the time came, that when the twins were sacrificed, they would return. The lords heard this prophecy. They were intrigued. They were excited, in the way that people who have too much power are excited by novelty. They sacrificed the twins. They burned them. They ground their bones to powder and threw the dust into a river. On the fifth day, the river brought something to the surface. 2 catfish. The catfish came to shore. They became young men. The hero twins stood in the world of the dead, alive, and looked around. They moved through Xibalba, disguised as traveling performers, wandering magicians, entertainers, the kind of people who exist at the margins of things and so pass unnoticed. They performed miracles. They burned a house and restored it. They cut a man apart and brought him back to life. They danced. They made the impossible ordinary. Word reached the lords of Xibalba. The lords summoned them. The twins came, still disguised, still anonymous, performing their marvels for an audience that did not yet know what it was watching. "Do it to us," the lords said. They had been watching the miracles with the delight of people who are used to being the ones who decide who lives and who dies, and who have just seen someone make that question look negotiable. Sacrifice one of us. Bring them back, We want to experience it." The twins looked at each other. "Are you certain?" they asked. "Yes," said the lords of Xibalba. The twins sacrificed the first lord. They did not bring him back. The other lords understood, in the moment between the sacrifice and the non-return, exactly what had happened, that they had been outplayed, that the wandering performers whose miracles had delighted them were the same twins they had ground to powder and thrown in a river, returned with a plan they had not anticipated. They began to beg. The hero twins stood in the underworld that had killed their father and had tried to kill them twice. And they listened to the lords of death begging, and they made their terms. No more human sacrifice in the name of Xibalba. No more tribute of blood demanded from the living world above. The lords of death would keep their realm. There would always be death. There would always be a Xibalba. But it would not have unlimited power. It would not have sovereignty. The lords agreed. They had no choice. The hero twins ascended from the underworld. They rose through the levels, up through the dark, up through the layers of the earth, back toward the surface of the world. And they kept going. They rose past the surface of the earth, past the trees and the mountains and the sky. They rose into the heavens. Hunahpu became the sun. Xbalanque became the moon. And every morning, without exception, all over the world, when the sun rises, it is a story about two brothers who descended into the place of death, who were killed and ground to dust and thrown into a river, who came back anyway, who defeated the lords of death through a combination of cunning and patience, and the willingness to let themselves be destroyed in order to prove that destruction was not final. The Maya looked up at the sun every morning and saw in it the answer to the question that all of tonight's stories have been circling. What happens if you go down and you don't come back broken? What if you come back as light? We end tonight in the Pacific, in the widest, deepest, most astonishing stretch of ocean on Earth, the Pacific, which covers more of the planet's surface than all the land masses combined, which was navigated by people who had no instruments except the stars and the swells and the color of the water and the behavior of birds. The Polynesian navigators were among the greatest seafarers who have ever lived, finding islands across thousands of miles of open ocean, settling them, building worlds in places that the rest of humanity didn't know existed. In this world, there was a trickster. His name was Māui. He fished up the North Island of New Zealand with a magical hook. He snared a sun with a rope woven from his sister's hair and slowed it down because the days were too short and the world needed more time for its work. He stole fire from the keeper of fires and gave it to human beings, which is why we have it still. He was endlessly inventive, endlessly ambitious, endlessly willing to attempt things that had never been attempted, usually for the benefit of humanity, and frequently without being asked. He was not always careful. He was not always successful, but he kept going. He had watched the world he helped make, the long days, the fire in the hearths, the islands rising from the sea, and he had noticed something about it that he could not make his peace with. People died, not in the way that fish die or birds die, temporarily, seasonally, in ways that are part of a larger cycling, but permanently. The people he knew grew old, and became something other than themselves, and then became nothing at all. And the ones who loved them were left with the particular absence we began with tonight. The silence where a person used to be, the world reorganized around a gap. Māui thought this was wrong. Not sad, not inevitable, wrong. A flaw in the design. Something that should not be. Something that could, he was sure of it, be fixed. He looked at death, and he saw not an immovable fact but a problem. And he was a trickster. Problems were what he was for. The goddess of death, in Māori tradition, was Hinanna, the great woman of the night. She was enormous, vast as a landscape, present as weather, inevitable as the dark that comes after every day. Her eyes were like obsidian, flashing in the west where the sun sets. Her hair was the colour of the sky at the last moment before full dark. Her hands, the texts describe this with the specificity of something important, were made of obsidian, sharp as any blade. She had not always been who she was. Once she had been Hunahpu, the Dawn Maiden, created to be the first woman, radiant and young and unknowing. She had been given a father, who was also the man she came to love. And when she discovered the truth of it, she was so devastated that she fled. She ran from the world of the living to the world of the dead. And in that crossing, she was transformed. The Dawn Maiden became the great woman of the night, the guardian of death's threshold, the one who receives all souls. She had been wounded into her purpose. She took it seriously. She slept each night, lay down in the west where the sun had gone, enormous and dark, her obsidian hands at her sides. And Māui had a plan. If he could enter her body while she slept, pass through her, from one side to the other, emerge from her mouth, he would have done what no living thing had ever done. He would have passed through death and returned. And in doing so, he would break open the door. Because once a thing has been done once, it can be done again. Once a living person has passed through death and returned, death becomes something crossable, and mortality becomes optional. And the long grief of human lives, the accumulating weight of all those silences where people used to be, would end. He was not doing this for himself. He was doing this for everyone, for all of humanity, for all the people who had ever sat beside a loss and thought I should go after them, for everyone who would ever sit beside a loss and think it. He was trying to make that thought unnecessary. He gathered his companions around him and told them what he intended. He told them one thing: do not laugh. Whatever you see, do not make a sound. Not until I have come out the other side. They looked at each other. They looked at Māui. They promised. The night came. Hinanna lay sleeping in the west, where the sun sets, enormous and dark and breathing with the slow breath of something that does not fear interruption. Maui's companions held themselves very still. He approached her. He was the man who had caught the sun. He had faced things larger and more dangerous than himself before, and he had won. He was clever and quick, and his whole life had been a sequence of impossible things made possible. He entered. His companions stood in the dark of the west and held their breath and watched and did not make a sound. Māui moved through the enormous darkness of death herself. He was doing it. He was actually doing it. Among his companions was a small bird, a fantail, Pawaka in Māori, the tiny darting bird that still flits and flutters around New Zealanders today, curious and restless, and unable to stay still for long, chattering its small, rapid song at everything. The fantail looked at what was happening. The fantail was not cruel. The fantail was not malicious. The fantail simply had the nature of a fantail, which is to say, it could not help itself. What it was seeing was too strange, too improbable, too unlike anything that should be happening. It laughed. Hinanna woke. She felt what was inside her. Her hands, of obsidian, closed. Māui did not emerge from the other side. He was the greatest trickster who had ever lived. He had fished up islands. He had caught the sun. He had given fire to humanity. He had attempted the largest thing in the history of the world. And he died inside death. And because he died before he could complete the journey, humans remained mortal. We have been mortal ever since. There is a particular quality to this ending that is worth sitting with before we leave it. Not the tragedy of Orpheus, who went for one person and almost succeeded and looked back at the wrong moment, losing what he had come for. Not the tragedy of Hermod, who did everything right and failed because of one voice he could not control, but the tragedy of someone who aimed at the largest target there is, who looked at the suffering of everyone who had ever lived and would ever live and said, not just for me, not just for the one I love, not just for my people, for all of them, for all of us, for all of time. He was almost there. He needed the fantail to hold its laughter for perhaps 30 more seconds. It couldn't. And so we are mortal. And so every person who is alive tonight will one day not be. And so the silences continue to accumulate. The gaps where people used to be, the 3 a.m. weight of grief, the question without a clean answer, where did they go? But perhaps this is also what the Māui story says. Someone tried. Someone looked at the fact of death and decided it was a problem to be solved rather than a wall to be accepted. Someone aimed at it with everything they had and very nearly reached it. The trying was real. The reaching was real. The love that motivated the attempt. Not personal love, not grief for a specific person, but love for the whole human project, for the whole species, for everyone who would ever have to sit beside a loss. That love was as real as any love in tonight's stories. It just wasn't quite enough. And yet, we tell the story, generation after generation, in the islands of the Pacific, in the long evenings when the stories that matter are told. The story of Māui and Hinanna has been told, not as a cautionary tale, not as a tragedy to be learned from, but as a story about someone who tried something extraordinary for the most generous possible reason and came closer than anyone has ever come. The fantail, it is said, has been restless ever since, darting and fluttering and unable to stay still, still sorry, still unable to quite forgive itself for the laugh that cost the world its immortality. "13 stories, 13 descents. From ancient Sumer, where someone pressed the first version of this story into wet clay 4,000 years ago, to the islands of the Pacific, where the story was still being told around fires when European ships arrived. From the flat, warm plains between the Tigris and the Euphrates, to the high plateaus of the Pacific Northwest. From the marble halls of classical Greece, to the deep forests of Finland. From the courts of ancient India, to the monastery halls of China and the volcanic islands of Japan. From the cold mead halls of the Norse world, to the jade-green jungles of the Maya. Different languages, different gods, different names for the dark, different shapes for the underworld, different prices asked at the gate, different guardians, different rivers to cross. But underneath all of it, when you listen for the shape rather than the details, a few simple things. We have met the ones who tend the underworld before, the keepers, the rulers, the guardians at every gate. Tonight we met something different, the ones who should not have been let through at all, and were. Some by trickery, some by argument, some by a love too large for any guardian to refuse, some simply by presuming they were owed it. The ones who went for knowledge. Väinämöinen, who walked into the Finnish underworld, seeking the words that would complete what he was building, and came back without them, transformed into a snake and then back into himself, wiser and emptier in the same moment. Odysseus, who stood at the threshold of the dead and listened to his mother tell him she had died of grief waiting for him. Aeneas, who walked through the Elysian fields beside his dead father and was shown the long line of everything that would come from his suffering, and left through the gate of dreams, carrying the knowledge that made the suffering bearable. The ones who reached for what wasn't theirs. Theseus and Pirithous, who wanted a goddess queen the way a trophy is wanted, and paid for the wanting, one in years he could not account for, one forever. Inanna, who went for reasons we do not fully understand, and was stripped of everything, and died, and came back. The ones who went for love. Dionysus, who went for the mother he had never known, and brought her home. Mokuren, who found his mother starving in a realm that turned every kindness to ash in her hands, and needed an entire community to do what his own great power could not. Psyche, who carried an impossible task into the underworld with nothing but careful instructions and the stubbornness of someone who has decided this is not where the story ends. And then Orpheus and Coyote, the same unbearable moment told twice, on opposite sides of the world, joined by a third we had already heard from Japan in another night's telling, who went for love and were told not to look, not to reach, not to seek reassurance before the moment of return, who could not hold the trust, who looked or reached a moment too soon, the same story arriving at the same unbearable moment with the same cost. And Savitri, who walked behind death itself for miles across the dust of the world, talking, precise and clear and completely prepared, who gave Yama every argument he could not refute, who did not look back, who did not reach, who kept moving and kept thinking until death itself ran out of things to say and gave her back what she came for. The one who went for duty. Hermod, who stepped forward when no one else did, who rode 9 days into darkness on a borrowed horse, who sat with the dead through a long cold night and made a good case to the Queen of Death, and came home with a promise that almost held, almost, the one voice in all of existence that said no, and the ones who aimed at death itself. Hunahpu and Xbalanque, who descended into Xibalba to avenge their father, who survived every trial through cunning and patience, who understood that the only way to win a game that is designed never to end is to change the game entirely, who let themselves be sacrificed, who rose from the river as fish and then as young men, who defeated the lords of death and ascended into the sky and became the sun and the moon, and Māui, who tried to crawl through the body of death itself and win immortality for all of humanity, who was the closest any being has ever come to ending the rule of death, and who was stopped by a laugh, by a small bird who couldn't hold itself still 30 seconds before the finish. These stories are very old. Some of them are older than writing itself. They were told in the dark, around fires, before anyone had thought of pressing words into clay or scratching marks into stone. They were carried in human mouths and memories across generations and centuries and millennia, arriving here, arriving now, still carrying whatever it was that made the first teller think they were worth keeping. Something was worth keeping. Something in these stories was true enough, or necessary enough, or consoling enough to be worth all that trouble. We think, perhaps, that it is this. The dead are not entirely gone, not in the imagination, not in the stories, not in the night hours when grief is not an idea but a weight, and the question arises again, unbidden, in the dark. Where are they now? The stories do not answer this question. They don't tell us what the land of the dead looks like in any final, definitive way. Every tradition pictures it differently. And perhaps that is the point. Perhaps the answer to where the dead go is not a place at all, but a direction. And the direction is simply further in. What the stories tell us is something different, something simpler. That the love does not stop at the boundary, that the impulse to follow, to reach, to refuse the separation. This is not a flaw. This is not a failure of understanding, something to be outgrown, a primitive response to be educated away. This is not embarrassing. It is not irrational. It is the oldest thing in us. It is the thing that pressed the first story into the first clay, that played the first music at the first grave, that turned back, even knowing it should not, just to see if they were really there, that followed Yama for miles through the dust, talking, that leaped the gates of hell on a borrowed horse, and sat with the dead through the long night, that entered the body of death itself, and almost came through the other side. This is not a story about mythology. This is a story about what it means to love something in a world where everything is temporary. About the refusal, not always successful, not always wise, but always human, to let that temporariness be the last word. The night is deep around you now. Your breath is slow and easy. The weight of your body is entirely held by the bed, by the floor, by the ordinary miracle of something solid underneath you that is not going anywhere. You don't need to carry anything tonight. Not the questions, not the losses, not the names of the ones who are no longer where they used to be. Let the stories carry them for a while. That is what stories are for. That is what they have always been for. From the first fire to this one. From the first telling to this one. From the first person who sat beside a loss and thought I should go after them to you tonight, in the dark. Go gently now, into the dark that is not frightening, into the quiet that is not absence, into the sleep that the ancients knew was the threshold's twin, the little crossing, the nightly rehearsal, the small death that gives back what it takes, the place where the boundary grows thin. You are in good company. You always have been. Sleep well.